Hello, everybody. Today is Saturday, January 20th, and episode 73 of Block Digest. Today we're coming at you at block 505,220. And today we got with us Mr. Rick, our resident meme master.
Hey, everyone. How are y'all doing today?
JW the Wookie.
Hey, guys.
Miss Janine hiding behind her window.
Hey.
And a sight for sore eyes, Mr. Theo Goodman. Where the fuck have you been, Theo?
Hey, what's up, man? I've been busy. I've been really busy, and you guys been taking it over. But I was really busy because I had this big commission to write a song, and it really took up a lot of time with the production value and all the mastering.
Oh, you musical whore. And we also got Mr. Acnix from the Bitcoin Buzz.
Hey now.
All right. So, I mean, you want to tell us a little bit about this project, Theo?
Okay. Well, there's a song, and there was some makeup involved in order to obscure the faces of those involved, because it's Bitcoin and you can do whatever you want. You can't tell me what to do.
Lend me your ears. It's time we act together so that everyone can see. There's a fox in the hen house, a fool from on the sea. We know we saw given into sin, pretending to be saviors, but you're the enemy within. We will kick you bastards out with your taste down by your feet. Leave the voices back down Blockstream.
What I love about this is, as bad as it is, you can tell that there's dozens, or at least about a dozen people involved.
On the bitstream, holding it down with your reins. But we the people own the system, and that cannot be tamed. Roll skeletons you keep coming out of your closet. Now the truth is free.
Put a Bcash hat there.
Bankers in bed with your own greed. Finance by crib. Leave the coin sip. Back down Blockstream. There's coin skip, Bitcoin salted, back on Blockstream.
It's so painful. What was he doing with the mic stand there? I don't think it's supposed to go there. I think that move might have been foreshadowing of the lyrics we're about to enjoy.
Did they bump into each other yet?
Yeah, we already missed the Bcash hat. Thinking, where is it going to go from here? Like, can it get any worse? Just wait.
There's a heron.
Yes, that is the literal lyrics.
Oh, no, man.
Oh my god!
I can't keep going, man. This is so bad.
So when I watched this,
How do I get one of those rubber stamps? I want one.
Okay, so wait, what's the chorus again?
So when I watched this, I had the
finance pipe tree.
Blockstream.
You gotta share that screen because I don't think everybody's had a chance to fully grok what just happened here.
Oh man.
You should just leave that up for a little bit longer with the subtitle. There's no games right here. That's literally just YouTube subtitling it so you can see what they're saying.
I'm trying to think if there's another song in existence that has that lyric, and I don't think so because it doesn't make any sort of artistic sense. I don't want to artistically think about the hair in your asshole.
But what's the relation?
There is even worse. Like it actually, if you can believe it, it goes downhill from here too.
How?
Yeah. All right. so
I'm just trying to the syllables. I have to listen to it again. Maybe it matches, but there's a hair in my asshole. How do the syllables line up on that beat? You see what I mean? You have to kind of like that. All right. Well,
he did the same thing with the hen in the hen house at the beginning. They definitely don't line up. He just threw it in as quick as possible. That's where, you could tell the song, like,
No, guys. Roger personally wrote these lyrics. He is just such a fucking artist, man. I mean, like, God, some powerful stuff.
I don't know. You think that somebody else besides the band wrote the lyrics?
Oh, absolutely, man. You got it. That's the thing that makes this so funny is you've got a crew of people. They must have played this song 10 or 20 times, right, to get all the different camera angles and everything. You've got the guy walking around the room. You've got lighting guys. You've got sound guys. You've got some kind of post-production, right, because all this was edited together. So you're talking about probably 10 people minimum that heard this song 15, 20 times each. And none of them said, I'm not sure there's a hair in my asshole is appropriate right now for what we're trying to say.
Well, I mean, it's just like the whole passion, like the finance pipe dream, back down block. It's like you're singing with a passion there. And it's just like, I don't know. The idea that there's like so many big blockers out there that there's enough to form a band and just like, do this whole thing. It's very like scripted. It's just like from New Orleans. Like, it's just, I don't know, anybody that hears music when it doesn't match up, sync right, you could kind of tell when it was written by someone else. And that
totally. This is what corporate America trying to sound like cutting edge cool kids looks like. It's just like it's like 20 degrees off, and then all of a sudden there's this moment where you just like throw up, where it's just like you've completely lost your mind. But check out the rest of the lyrics, because I would argue it actually gets slightly weirder from there.
It does. Why couldn't they have just said, I got my miner sawed off. I'm gonna knock some blocks off. Coin killer. Isn't that that's way more creative than
I personally I can relate to a sawed-off shotgun a lot more than what they're trying to get me to connect with right now.
Hey, but they're getting their money's worth because we're sitting here analyzing their song,
Dude,
and they're getting exposure.
2-to-1 dislike ratio right now. 2-to-1 dislike ratio. I mean,
of course, don't you know that it's paid? Those are paid for extreme trolls that have been. The alarm went off in order to dislike it. Of course.
Theo, you didn't see my tweet. I also resigned from Blockstream in November. They didn't send me my No 2X hat in time, and they violated my payment agreement.
Yeah, but that's because you have signed a contract with AXA Insurance in Paris, France.
What? No, I don't know what you're talking about. No comment.
So I don't, this is the first time I've seen this video. So
done such a good job resisting the immaturity that is making fun of Roger Ver on this one.
So was this video is this just a really bad propaganda video, or was it made as a parody? Because I honestly can't tell.
No, it was actually really published as a serious video, and then one of the very first comments, which was within moments, right? Like it's published, and then immediately Roger Ver is on it saying, "Hey, can somebody post the lyrics?" Which the irony of that just blows my mind too. Like he thought the lyrics were so good, we should just have them in text because that was going to help him accomplish his mission even more. The
wow,
just unparalleled.
I mean, I would say if this was intended as a parody video, then job well done. It did its job. But if this was meant as a serious video, like, oh my God, these people have the
create a new meme.
Back off Blockstream.
Yeah, they were trying to fire up this back off Blockstream meme. They were trying to like pretend that it was, you know, getting kicked off with a great piece of art that was just going to make it so viral we couldn't resist it. It really is staggering.
And I mean, like
somebody's got to have the lyrics. I can't find them, but you got to see the lyrics on the screen where they go from the hair.
Real quick, this is going to kind of drag on a little longer, I think, than we intended. But I really want to kind of compare this real quick to actual, genuine music made because people want to, and just which one's going to actually move people? Do you think?
Yeah. Let's go. I was out of town, so I missed a week. But you know cryptocurrencies ain't skip a beat. Bitcoin futures opened up and made history. The CBOE froze like Mr. Freeze. I saw a dump, better get for breeze. Now they ain't saying nothing like Mr. Bean. Up next, CME gonna hit the scene. But they ain't ready for that blood when it fill the streets. One day it's alt season, then alter dead. The next day, alter back, market's all a mess. Just call it B cash to get her out your head. I think that little boy schizo and forgot his meds. BTC the king no matter what he say. I wish them crypto kitties would all run away. Bitcoin pumped from 13 to 20K. And altcoins somehow live to see another day. The Verge got pumped by John McAfee. OMG got pumped by a Vitalit tweet. XRP pumped and dumped, don't be mad at me. I wrote the book on crypto rap in this chapter 3. You ain't met a human with a more fluid verse. I think Det and Stellar Lumen started moving first. Litecoin and ADA went to Jupiter. Then extra bytes and TRX left the universe. And you can't forget Campus and Lux. Whoever late to petrodollar better hand them a tux. It was a funeral that pump and dump damaged enough. It was a crime dog could probably use a hand from a gruff. Yeah, yo, V-Chain and THC with the master nodes. Token card got delisted, shut the casket closed. BTC Miami, yeah, I have to go. I'm just addressing the market like a fashion show. Making money over the net, John McEnroe. Half a trill, I'm still raving like Alan Poe. With Bitcoin, you got a hold like the Alamo. I'm married to the game, this is just a stag and dough. My portfolio got high off the weed coins. About the highest, Snoop Dogg smoking 3 joints. I'm talking higher than the crime rate in Detroit. Yeah, higher than the kick from Bruce Leroy. And you better get your money off Bitfinex, or you gonna feel it like a Mike Tyson fist connect. I'm still surprised that your funds ain't missing yet. I thought we all knew Tether was the big finesse. So when you trading, you forget the other names. In 5 months, Binance the #1 exchange. The crypto wrap up. I'm taking class honors. I was gone for a week, but I'm back stronger. Yeah, by Dragon Chain.
Yeah,
I have to admit that there's definitely. I mean, it's. I wouldn't say it's like, you know, the most brilliant lyrics I've ever heard, but there's definitely moments in that where I laughed because it was funny, right? Like the guy knows how to tell some jokes in there, and
also it's just miles away. Like that's him, like genuinely, right. Like this is what it is. Like you know,
it doesn't feel polished. It does feel genuine. It feels like something that somebody put some time into. And, you know, like a normal person trying to express themselves instead of like, you know, like 3 guys in marketing going, what are the kids into these days?
Yeah, it's a labor of love, not like a fucking corporate propaganda piece. Do this now and think that you thought to do it yourself.
Yeah, totally. No, it's pathetic. You got to bring up that link, man, and show the full lyrics, though, before we move on to more noteworthy stuff. Although this is pretty noteworthy, I gotta say. Nothing made me laugh. Nothing got a bigger response from me this week than Bitcoin to this video.
Dude, that was breaking news. That was important. We had to go on air immediately. I mean, those lyrics
just go down and
are just
go to the start at the hair.
Back down.
Because
what do they mean by back down Blockstream? Do they mean more like back down, bend over kind of thing, or what is going on there?
I don't know. Honestly, I feel like this was like Roger at a bar one night. He's like came up with like just a couple lines. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play this out." He wrote it all out. Then
maybe that was after the Bitcoin era log interview, and he got drinking.
I wouldn't be surprised. He came up with like just the chorus, and then for like the past month, he's been mastering it.
I just want to know why he's throwing that out his door after everything else. It got weird up to that point, but now he's got a hygiene problem and he's throwing it out of the door.
Yeah. So like people don't throw hairs out the door like that, okay?
How does one throw a hair? Because it's the level of air like resistance and drag, like it doesn't have enough weight to really.
I'm just picturing this guy trying to throw the hair and it comes back on him like an envelope, like an opposing wind. Oh my gosh.
Maybe that's a metaphor.
I was exactly thinking that. I think it's Flaked on Netflix. There's a scene where Will Arnett's trying to like throw an envelope into the ocean.
No, it's
just
Arrested Development. Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to throw the insurance check into the ocean. Oh my gosh, that's exactly.
All right, so I've got a short segue here that's related to hair, because in other news. Last week on Friday, there was in New York the Rare as Fuck conference. Rare.af is the site, and there was CryptoKitties was there, CryptoPunks was there, Spells of Genesis, Rare Pepe, and a bunch of other people. Also, the so-called establishment art people were there, like people from galleries, people interested in crypto were there. It was I was really surprised. There was actually a lot of people there. You would have been surprised. It was over full, the whole venue. Anyway, Joe Looney gave me this at the conference, and this is hair Pepe. That's why it's a good, happens to be smooth. Yeah, smooth hair Pepe, but don't throw this hair, please.
That's what it was. So, that's what he had a problem with. It was that guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And so I'll go on because there's another card that has to do with smooth hair Pepe that you could somehow relate it to the song we just heard too. I'll tell you in just a second. It gets weird. So what this is, you say this is just a plastic bag with a sticker on it, Theo. Well, kind of, yeah. It has a dank rare on it, but inside is an open dime with the asset on it. So this is really a dime bag of one Rare Pepe. On it. And this is probably the only way to securely have a digital asset that you can trade physically like this that I know of. I mean, you could do, of course, we know the coins with the holograms on them that everyone has seen. That works pretty good with the holograms, but, that could be, it's hard to tell if they've been tampered with. And there is a much larger amount of trust involved with the person giving to it that's actually on there. So the whole story about how that relates to the song, well, so on December 2nd, 2016 I do not have the card ready. I can maybe pull it up, but there's another Rare Pepe card called Bad Hair Day. And it is a picture of the smooth hair Pepe getting caught in a machine, because Bad Hair Day is when the mempool was clogged up due to massive amounts of smooth hair Pepe trading that day on the decentralized exchange. And and that historical day of December 2nd, 2016 is documented with the card Bad Hair Day. So maybe this has to do with somebody not being able to get a transaction through back in 2016 on December 2nd, Bad Hair Day, and they're just really frustrated, and they decided that they have to pull hair out of their areas and throw it out the door. But who knows? It's all related.
That is a perfect compare and contrast, because Bitcoin is super weird, but you can tell the difference between like Owen super weird and Roger super weird, where you just kind of want to you laugh and then you kind of want to cry a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Man. Yeah. Sorry, I got nothing but oh man.
All right, on to the next topic.
Yeah, time to try to redeem this show and talk about
I don't know how we're going to top that topic, honestly.
Thank you for bearing with us while we masturbate over nonsense. Now to the real news. Look at that mempool get chowed through. Damn. It's almost as if a spammer stopped spamming, or maybe some incompetent business stopped being incompetent or something. It's like it's something just changed overnight. So who wants to speculate wildly with me?
I say it might have something to do with some lightning transactions on the network and people wanting to get the transactions back on the network. I don't know. I saw some speculation like that on Twitter. I was thinking it might be on.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that it's been very obvious for a long time that this has not been accidental, that there's been a spam attack, and that it picks up and turns off when it would make sense to do so. And I would hope that what's happening is they're thrown in the towel soon enough. They've realized that we made our play. We're going to pump Bcash a little bit, and they'll probably still be in the mix. But my hope is that they've realized it's just not going to be cost effective from here on out. Like it was arguably cost effective up until Lightning was out and people really knew that it worked and you could send money on it. And maybe now it's just that line of FUD of we can't scale, that's just not going to work. So they're going to have to give up on that for a bit, with the exception of probably maybe periodic, campaigns. But the full-fledged campaign probably is running out of steam.
I got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping that we hear some Coinbase user seeing batch transactions when they go to withdraw something. I mean, I'm hoping, praying, but I'm perfectly willing to acknowledge that I might be disappointed.
Yeah, that's where it's like, I hope you're right, but it's like I don't want to hold my breath because like we could have held our breath last year and we would be dead by now.
I think we'd be able to see if they were batching transactions. I mean, I certainly haven't looked into it, but I know a lot of people are watching those addresses, and I think we'd probably see a big spike in maybe the total dollar value of transactions or something. But maybe somebody will do some analysis and find out that's the case. I'd also like to think that they're smart enough to brag about it if they ever do anything right, but maybe not.
But I mean, I guess let's wait and see. But I think it's pretty encouraging. You got I think most of the transactions were below 200 satoshis a byte, back to levels of not insanity. So anybody out there who has lots of outputs peppered in their wallets, condense them now. Lowball the fee and do it now. Like right now. Like while you're watching, start doing that now.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, because fees they're going to go back up organically and they're going to get really, really high. And it's not going to be crazy if we end up in a place where on-chain transactions are $100 a pop. For a non-dusty sort of transaction, we're definitely headed in that direction. I don't think it's going to happen in the next year, but it's going to happen at some point. So better play it safe and get ready for Lightning and have your stuff cleared up in a SegWit address.
Well, I guess to slide along, unless anybody else wants to speculate with us. Come on, guys, wild speculation. Nobody? All right. This thing calmed me down a lot. The last time we were on, we were talking about Capital One shutting down all crypto-related transactions, and there were a few other banks mentioned in that article, one being Metropolitan Bank. And pretty much they're denying that they're specifically targeting crypto deposits and that this was something new. It was a long-standing policy of theirs to hold non-U.S. entities to kind of a higher standard of scrutiny when they're depositing into the bank. And this has been a long-standing policy. That is not something new that just happened. So Whew. I and all other users of the Shift card do not have to worry about that randomly ceasing to work one day and not having an easy way to cash out of or use their crypto. So, some good news.
Yeah.
I imagine the same is probably true for Capital One too. It's probably something similar along the lines of what Metropolitan Bank has in place.
Well, that's like what we're seeing with most of these news stories when they do pop up. It's like, well, we heard something, and so we're going to extrapolate and write a whole article about it and make the market freak out.
And Capital One, I think, is legitimately doing that. I mean, they have made express statements. We've seen customers directly told that, like, they haven't issued any statement to the contrary. I mean, like, Metropolitan Bank was just kind of lumped in there as like oh, what other incidents of this are going on? And they actually immediately responded and went no. And like, I personally not had any kind of service hiccups with my card or heard of anybody else. So I think it's just kind of, I think we're probably going to see like the bigger banks maybe crack down a little stricter, and some of the smaller ones, or not the big four banks or anything outside of that kind of category, maybe see how far they can kind of push things and gain an advantage there.
Yeah, because it's really like we're seeing it at different levels, right? It's like some of these big major banks, it's like we just hear like, they say it's a fraud. Now they say they're sorry it's a fraud, or, they're thinking about doing futures and all that, where, we got stuff like Fidelity where they're like, trying to move full board towards like on-ramping people into the system. And yeah, a lot of in between there, and just sort of see where everybody shakes out in this. We probably see the rest of this year how these different banks feel about the system and whether they're going to, allow their customers to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just a matter of like the kind of business incentives. I mean, I'm sure everybody who's been in the space for a while knows all about incentives and how different players are kind of incentivized to do what's in their best interest, and how in Bitcoin, at least, kind of everything is targeted to kind of incentivize people towards reinforcing the same thing. But that's really a universal thing. I mean, everywhere in the world is pretty much just what are people incentivized to do and whose incentives align with who else's. And I mean, when you start to see like big changes in the environment, well, that relation of incentive alignment starts shifting. And I mean, if any bank out there is willing to take on the risks kind of associated with the crypto space to try and get a gain in customers or their profit margins, while some of their competitors are kind of not doing that, I mean, it's incentives there. Hey, they're leaving money on the table, guys. Let's grab it.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm kind of hopeful that we won't have too much of this stuff. The mainstream has adopted it so much more than I thought they would over the last year, that we might be a little paranoid when we think this stuff is happening now, which would be nice. I still wouldn't be totally shocked if we had some, nonsense, especially since it can impact the market, and that's just such a great way to make money for a bank. Jamie Dimon to come out and say bad things and then buy a bunch of Bitcoin. It's just, I think that's too tempting. But I think those things might be short-lived plays now instead of the longer con. So hopefully we won't have too many of these problems.
Well, I mean, like long term, like I don't know. I mean, long term, the kind of banks around right now being skeptical of things are starting to dip their toes in the water. They're going to be big players. I mean, like, take a look around at the landscape. I mean, you've got like Bitfinex, and look at like the kind of PR disaster they're dealing with. You look at places like Kraken or Coinbase. Yeah, they fucking crash constantly, can never really handle a wave of user load. They're probably weeks or months behind on customer support tickets. Like, they can't scale or design their infrastructure for shit. You have like, something historically like Mt. Gox that imploded on itself for embezzling. Like BTCE was fucking raided by the US government for not really complying with the international standard for KYC and AML laws. I mean, like, the players in this space, they're amateurs. Like, It's fucking amateurs, dude. And like, they're not surviving the long term. Like, they're not. Like, the only rational move is to get bought out by actual stock markets or banks, or you're going to get ran into the ground, because eventually those institutions are going to come along and they're going to start looking around for exchanges to buy with infrastructure they can retool or improve upon. Or if they deem them that incompetent, they're just going to compete and drive them into the ground. I mean, like, if this is really trying to be a global, like, financial asset, a global currency at a global scale, like this fucking kid show shit where it crashes every time like more than 10 people try to fucking do something at once, like, it's not going to carry us there. It's not going to happen. And the second an actual adult comes along who knows what the fuck they're doing, like, it's game over. Like, this current cast of exchange players, like, I guarantee you the super majority of them is not going to survive the next 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. And I think part of the reason is that as the market cap goes up and more people invest, we start getting people that are politically connected that are invested in Bitcoin. And then, you know, when somebody like Jamie Dimon says something crazy, or Coinbase intentionally does something to pump Bcash, there's actual consequences, right? I mean, we can look at those government agencies and go, I wonder why they're not doing anything right now. But the answer soon enough will be that people that have greased the right wheels and have the right political connections will be making calls to the SEC that the SEC will actually take, and then they'll do something about it. So I think, I think we're definitely headed towards more stability.
Yeah, like, honestly, I've been thinking about it, just like, you know, these banks, you're right. And like, you know, we talked about how it's like they're kind of, you know, making their investments, whoever the smarter people are in those in that sector is, you know, probably buying up Bitcoin at home and everything. But like, as far as like who's going to be, you know, taking on the right system to create this first, I feel like we haven't even seen that come up yet. Like, where it's just people coming together, like, you know, like a local credit union, and, you know, just smart people who come together to create the system that will, I don't know, I'm not going to say will replace, but it's definitely like will create the model to, you know, to replicate. And, you know, that's going to be the big winner. And, yeah, I don't even think we have that even available yet. I think those connections are just still being formed. So it's going to be, yeah, I think like you're saying, in 10 years, you know, we'll definitely see a lot fewer of these guys around.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's like exactly, like, credit unions are a perfect example, Rick, of like where you could go in a middle ground there. And then you have like all of these financial players who know how to operate infrastructure at these kinds of scales. And then you look at like the work on things like BISC or Leverage, or like all these other decentralized exchanges out there. And it's like a full spectrum of players in all kinds of different trust models that are just going to completely replace everybody in the landscape now, because everybody, like, they're not doing anything. Like, they're sitting on their asses, throwing handfuls of money in the air, going, why would we need to improve or like scale or like redesign everything? Look at all this money.
Yeah, I just can't wait till they really start seeing like the real efficiencies that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency like will achieve. But it's like, yeah, it's like we kind of got to get out of our way for that to happen. And like, you know, like you're saying, I mean, like, maybe we need a whole new system to test that out on, and you know, try to get out of our way on the way that it's integrated into our lives and how it works. Like, that's one of those things where I don't know, like, the minute we start thinking about like, well, there's a way that we can just keep making profit on this end. It's like, I don't know, we kind of keep getting in our way of like allowing the market to be as efficient as possible. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess, yeah. Any other thoughts, or should we move along? All right. Just wanted to kind of touch on this lightly. I know JW kind of went a little in depth last time the Russian CEO was kidnapped in Ukraine, but a Russian blogger who was running his mouth with his identity publicly known on the internet was tied up in his home and robbed for almost $500,000 worth of crypto and cash. Because he was publicly known under his real identity, bragging about how much money he has. And there's that thing called public records, and people, use your imagination. You've got Facebook, you've got phone books, you've got fucking DMV records. Because, hey, remember, governments aren't really that good at keeping your information private. You've got all your financial records through things like credit cards and bank accounts. Hey, guess what? They're not that good at keeping your information private. There is a sea of information when you tie a name, a face, all of these other kinds of things. Hey, guess what? A person who's motivated enough, they're going to dig through and connect the dots and find you personally. And it's not going to end well because, somebody comes into your house, hits you over the head with a wrench and takes your word seed. There's no getting that back. There's no calling the bank. There's no chargebacks. So, I mean, I don't know, JW, if you want to kind of reiterate some of the stuff we said last time.
Yeah, the funny thing about this story is that they didn't, from what I could tell, they didn't even steal his crypto because he just had like $500,000 in a safe. And so I think probably the crypto angle here is there's just a lot of people that have never been wealthy before that now have money, and they don't know how to keep it safe, right? If the average person that has, had a couple generations of wealth had $500,000 in a safe, you can almost guarantee they're throwing $20 an hour to some dude to stand around and look tough, right? It's such a small expense compared to the amount of value that you're trying to, a fungible value you're trying to hold on site. And I think, if you do have that much in crypto, you should definitely think of it as like cash, right? If you have $500,000 in crypto on your premises, you're probably crazy if you don't have, real security staff, firearms, a couple dogs, like the basics. Like I doubt Bill Gates has anywhere near $500,000 in cash laying around his house for the same reason. So you probably shouldn't either. And, don't feel like your crypto is more secure than cash because, there's the old $5 pipe wrench, issue. They'll just beat you with the pipe wrench until you hand over your seed. So yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a crypto issue, but it's an issue with just, I think, anytime you have a lot of people that have wealth and don't really know how to manage it and keep it safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like definitely one of those things where you wish the guy would have known better than to like be spouting. Like we were saying, just being in crypto and like having, you're known, and that's in itself risky. But to be like, oh yeah, I'm like crypto wealthy, and you know who I am, and I'm a bug. It's definitely like a sense of like, this is just I didn't know that that's like a huge risk or something, which like I think that would be common, but like I guess it's not, and that's something I think everybody in crypto should be more aware of. And I know it's like one of the things that it's like I've already shown my face. It's hard to like kind of go backwards and stuff. So it's like I try to take the appropriate steps to make sure that like if I do run into somebody, it's at somewhere where I chose, basically.
Right. And, I mean, you're also aware of the fact that you have shown your face and that people can find you. And so you're not going to have $500,000 under that couch behind you, right? You're just not, you're aware of these issues and you're thinking about it. And so anybody that's thinking they're going to bust into Rick's house and get $500,000, you're not. So it's not worth the trouble. But that's the way you have to think through, right? You have to think like an adversary and how much reward they're going to get for the risk that they have to face. And also, like I'm obviously not showing my face. I don't have my real name. It's not because I have $500,000 under the couch. It's just because it's such cheap insurance, and I thought about it before I started engaging. And so it was an option. I think a lot of people that are public out there would say, if I was to do it all over again, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but it's probably worth it, especially if Bitcoin goes up 100 times from where it's at right now. But yeah, as long as you're thinking those things through and you realize when you've opened yourself up, like, you know, even with what I'm doing, like I'm not taking all the steps that I would need to stay really anonymous, right? Like if somebody wanted to put in some effort, they could figure out who I am. And I'm just trying to make that just a little bit more difficult, right? So it's like throwing a dog in the front yard, right? Obviously, somebody can poison a piece of meat and throw it at the dog, and unless you spent like $25,000 for a dog that's trained not to eat food from a stranger, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But it's just those additional sort of defense and depth barriers. They're cheap, they're cost effective, then they're worth doing.
Yeah, definitely. So, and just like reiterate, I already cashed out last year to move up here. I am very not at this point.
Exactly. Totally.
I don't buy and I don't sell. That's all I'll say.
Colt 45 and 2 zigzags, baby.
No, I mean,
Also, as you can see, like I don't have my face anywhere, and like even my avatar is like obscuring its face. Like I'm going all the way with this.
Your avatar to be identifiable.
Yeah, I was like, I bet she doesn't even have blonde hair. She's
That's
just throwing
awesome.
us off.
I lost everything on Bitcoin dice.
Janine is actually a 250-pound African American male, also, just in case anybody was wondering.
Oh God, then this. Yeah, I have like the best voice modulator ever. Too bad Bitfinex couldn't use it, you know, with his thing. Might have actually been able to understand him.
Oh, dude, that voice modulator was a joke. Like, it is a complete joke. Stripping that away is child's play, and the fact that he thought that provided any kind of extra security is hilarious.
I've got a hair, and I'm gonna throw it out the door.
Now, seriously though, if you're a crypto millionaire, you probably don't want to do anything on social media at all, right? Like this would be crazy to do if you have a ton of money, because it's so easy. Like Shinobi was saying, it's just so easy to track people down, right? You can, for example, if you're not on a VPN, it's pretty easy to get your IP address. It's pretty easy to tie that to a home address. It's pretty easy to tie that to a name. And even people that take some pretty extreme measures, they're going to make mistakes sometimes. And it's obviously far more cost effective. I mean, how much could any of us possibly be getting paid to sort of do this show and have Twitter followers, right? Like that return for the risk, if you have a ton of money stored up already, is just completely, the equation doesn't work out. So if you really want to be on Twitter and you want to do, live stream video stuff, be moderately poor.
Is that
I don't know if you guys saw
stick, Theo?
I'm just cutting some apples. I thought I would cut some apples today because they're healthy. And then if I need to cut wood, I can just use the other side.
Oh man,
I got a crazy feral cat around here. You
don't go to Theo's house. Oh, I would say like you should be worried about showing that on air in Germany because Germans don't like weapons. But then I remembered that Germany doesn't have a government at the moment, and I completely forgot because it's like everything is like still working. Like it's like someone asked me, "Is there government in Germany?" I'm like, "Yeah."
How can you make sauerkraut unless you have a big knife to cut? You've got to chop it. Dice it up. The cabbage. So it's totally legitimate to have a big knife if you have to do a lot of work. Yeah, Germany doesn't have a government. It's a parliamentary system and they can't get along. So there's not a government shutdown like you have in the US. I think that could happen. I don't really know actually how that works, but there is not one now. But regarding the American shutdown, what is interesting related to crypto that Zero Hedge, or I had the article up, but Zero Hedge pointed out, he didn't link it to crypto, but I think it's interesting, is that, let's see, the Treasury, U.S. Treasury has about 80% less budget or employees. Keep scrolling down. So that means, and that includes the IRS. So until the government is back, they're severely, there we go. See, 83% less funding, or 83% less. And then the SEC also, Securities and Exchange Commission, sharply curtailed, shrink its staff to about 300 employees from 4,600. So if anybody is on a scam busting rant and calling the SEC about ICOs, I think during the so-called shutdown, it won't be a high priority. But who knows? Maybe the priorities have changed. We don't know. But I just think it's interesting. Same thing, CFTC, also really, curtailed. So, and of course, museums, guys, you can't go to Smithsonian, is closed. No Air and Space Museum.
No national parks. That's the only part that disappoints me. It's like, damn it, I would go to a national park. It's like, that's the thing that I care about. I wish that would stay open.
National parks are closed.
Who's going to stop you? Nobody's working. Just go.
I'm pretty sure congressmen and senators, they take the days off.
Yeah, some of those parks are still open. You gotta check each one.
Don't worry, guys. I promise they will more than make up for the lack of spending your money that they're doing over the next couple of days. Like they're going to catch up. Don't worry. You're not going to be left with anything extra. Don't expect a tax refund or anything. They will find a way to spend that money of yours in spite of themselves.
Yeah,
I like how under the business and economy section it says the shutdown is likely to postpone the release of market moving economic data. That's a bit of a interesting phrase to use.
Yeah, they say that unless if it was
they're slower on their market manipulation. Oh no.
Well, I mean, I'm just coming at it from the angle
national
of
security.
I don't know, I've seen these happen, and my friends in the service, we don't get the days off. That's where it's I don't know, it's a government shutdown. It's people take the days off and everything because it's we're trying to play this political move. But the guys that are really doing the real work, as far as on the Coast Guard and front lines and stuff, and protecting us, they don't take the days off.
No, yeah, 911 still works. It's just it's a good propaganda play is all that it is. And there are some people that work for different government agencies that do have to take the day off and can't really afford to do that, and so they're caught in between. But that's an advantage if you're a greasy politician, because now you've got a human interest story to help push your agenda and get a little bit more power. So it's definitely just two competing mafias fighting, and this is a good PR move to get what they want.
I haven't been following the news at all, but I just imagine it's got something to do with they're not voting the way they want, so they're going to shut down the government until we do. I don't know. I haven't paid attention to it at all, but I'm just.
Yeah, that's what it always is. It's always over a negotiation over budget spending, and then that ties into, well, if I'm gonna approve your budget deal, then you've got to approve my budget deal, or you've got to give me this law, right? It's all a negotiating thing.
Sorry, do you have something you wanted to say, Yannick?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know really how Parliament having issues in Germany compares. I haven't noticed any services that don't work, but honestly, I don't use that many government services. Nothing's burned down. Everyone's going to work as normal. And in fact, I didn't even notice that we still didn't have a government in Germany. So pretty sure everything's going to be okay.
It's pretty much the same here, unless you go to one of these parks where they, were funded, but today they're not.
Wait, you mean when the government shuts down, the whole world doesn't explode? What?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how that works. The trains still run on time, especially in Germany. Trains pretty much run on time in Germany.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's I don't know. It's if it's outside of your control, I try not to stress about it. And this is where it's it's just so obvious we don't have control over DC and these legislators and everything, where it's just that's why I don't pay attention to it. It's best not to even look at it because I can't have any effect on it. whatsoever. I mean, like maybe if I focus so hard on Bitcoin to where it screws up their finances, maybe.
That's it. Yep. This government shutdown is only the beginning. Let's see what they do when their budget is completely slashed because they can't effectively tax anymore. But that's going to be the fun government shutdown.
Well, I did notice, hasn't the stock market been like having a bit of a hard time the past few days?
Really? Because all I've been hearing is how much it's going to go up.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's a couple calls too, right? Because those guys are all politically connected. So the market manipulation that we see with like Bcash and the spamming, that stuff goes on at at a global scale also. So if it's in the right political party's best interest for things to look scary and get people sort of fearful, it's not always just like an announcement we might go to war. It can also just be a phone call to a few key players that hit the right buttons.
Mm-hmm. But move along. Something I kind of wanted to just touch on real quick. We've actually mentioned this on the show before, but it's kind of a little longer standing project that's still pushing forward. The Mitsubishi Financial Group is attempting to pretty much launch their own, peg token to the yen. And they want to actually open an exchange for this too. And like in order to do this, obviously Japan has kind of really slapped a lot of regulation on top of cryptocurrencies and the kinds of things that exchanges have to comply to. So they're going to have to deal with the Financial Services Agency. And anybody who's kind of been paying attention to the situation in Japan, like there was a flurry of applications over the last year. And I think 20 or so exchanges that were actually cleared to operate. But this is kind of interesting. They're still pushing forward with this idea despite all of the things that have been happening in this space lately, like Tether being the focal point of all this crazy FUD and get that banker crap out of here. And just all of these other alternative projects trying to do smart contracts, air quotes, just imploding on themselves. And it's kind of really a net gain for us and a net, loss softening for them. Because like when you do this and you introduce a system like this, it really changes the dynamic with consumer deposits and commercial banks right now. And that's going to cause problems, but it's also kind of a mechanism to cushion the inevitable implosion that's coming in that sector of the economy. And when it comes to us in the crypto world, if there is actually a fiat crypto token out there in the world that's just freely transactable, that's how hard it is to get in and out of crypto. Just snap your finger. And like the nature of that in terms of friction involved in exiting or leaving the space or getting into the space, like it's going to be insane. Like even just the integration of merchant processing with crypto. You don't need to get a bank. You don't need to deal with all the overheads of a processor. You want to move something into fiat to hedge. And they're actually continuing to push forward with this. I mean, any other thoughts?
I'm skeptical, man. I'm really skeptical that they're going to let this go through. I think this is probably just a PR move. I don't think they have any intention of actually building this thing because it really would, like you said, screw up banking if people are allowed to hold their own money. And there's a lot of, there's just a lot of people that are a lot of powerful people that would suffer financially if this was approved. And I don't think that they lack the influence to be able to say, no, you're not going to undercut, the whole concept of fractional reserve banking. We're not going to let that happen this week.
But that's what's so interesting about Japan and their integration of crypto. They've been in economic depression for what, 20, 30 years? Like the central bank of Japan literally owns more than half of their stock market because just them directly buying stock is what's keeping it from imploding on itself. Like, they are, globally speaking, the country that is the furthest stretched out and the furthest down the path of how long can we keep this Ponzi scheme going. And I think they're well aware they can't keep it going much longer. So like, I think like literally that dynamic is like the biggest aspect, I think, of why Japan is going so hardcore into Bitcoin. Like, they did institute negative interest rates over the last couple of years. They had bank runs like you've never seen. Like, they literally overnight sold out of safes. Like, when they went negative interest rates, the next day you could not buy a physical safe anywhere in Japan because everybody went out and bought them to put their cash in when they pulled it out of the bank. So like, as far as where Japan's at, like, they're already kind of at that point where they've set up that incentive for that bank run. Like, they're already dealing with all of these problems coming home to roost systemically. So, I mean, in Japan's case specifically, what do they have to lose? Like, they're pretty much at the end of their rope anyway.
Well, I mean, this is where it gets to be really interesting, right? Like I've been saying, I think 2018 might be the year of sort of international conflicts over Bitcoin. If let's just say the Bank of Japan did embrace cryptocurrency and people are allowed to hold their own money, that is going to be a much better store of value than a US dollar that is in a US bank account, right? And it's not even an option for somebody that's in Japan, right? They're obviously going to do that. And that really, that would cause people not to want to take on the additional risk of holding their government money, let's say, in any other place. So all of the different countries, all the different currencies are in constant competition unless they're pegged to the US dollar. And I think Japan is actually, all of their major important decisions are controlled by the US Federal Reserve anyway. But in as much as the currencies do compete, countries that don't want to compete are not going to be happy about this, right? So no, I mean, I think it would be a really good thing. It'd be interesting. I think it would be strange to see how they would do that. And obviously they wouldn't be able to do something like Bitcoin where there's a limited supply, because then they, I doubt they're talking about shutting down central banking in Japan. That would be, definitely another step that would be interesting. And I also doubt that if they did it, they would allow you to know the total supply. They would have a ledger that's not publicly verifiable. And then I'm also guessing that they would only allow you to trade on their exchanges, and that there would be KYC sort of checks as you moved in and out, and probably dollar amount restrictions and other things. But I really don't even think they could go that far and provide that much freedom without somebody dropping a bomb on their heads. So we'll see how it plays out. But the way how would it works, it just doesn't make sense that it's possible without coming to the point of just giving up internationally.
But how would that play, like, publicly? I mean, if it's literally like, America, we're going to bomb Japan because crypto. I mean, the minute a military power starts taking military action, not even just Bitcoin directly, but because of crypto, that's the global wake-up call. That's whoa.
I don't think it would go that far, right? Like, it would go that far with somebody like Libya or Iraq when they try to play games with the banking system, because they weren't tied in to the US banking system. They weren't really part of the empire fully integrated yet. Japan has been a colony of the US government since World War II, right? So the idea that they're kind of making independent decisions, that they're really even a nation state, I think is overstated. So whatever they do, I think it'll ultimately be a decision that's made in New York. But I really don't think that they're going to decide to cut their own throats.
This kind of harps back like what we're saying about a credit union coming together to like form these partnerships that create the the leaders of tomorrow and stuff. Because like I feel like when I read this, like I was thinking about like what you guys talk about with Nash and like Sound Money and Ideal Money and like trying to value target Bitcoin and with like a pegged token. And I don't know, like I see it as like, one of these ideas where like maybe this will form the relationship to, or the relationship's formed. Like this is just like the creation of the system. Like this is the way like these systems will work is like, you'll go to this geographic area and they will have their own cryptocurrency or their own peg token to a cryptocurrency. And, that is their in-house banking system away from the central banking system. But
yeah, I mean,
I'm not
it's
sure.
It's possible this is game over, right, for government fiat, right? It's possible that what we're seeing in Japan is the first steps that's going to lead to a fully decentralized, secure money, and people will have the freedom to move in and out of it, and then choose the most secure store of value that's available, right? And so they would go into the yen, the digital yen, whatever, and then they would move into Bitcoin. And it's possible that this is that moment, right? But it's not possible to have freedom in financial transactions and have the current like nation state systems of money. And you can figure that out just by looking at the laws, right? It's illegal for you as a U.S. citizen to make a lot of decisions related to where you store your money, which store of value you choose, and things like that. And the fact that it's illegal tells you that they don't want you to do it, and that it's probably something you would want to do, right? They don't have to make stuff illegal if you wouldn't want to do it anyway. So it's possible that what we're seeing is the end of those sort of laws, legal tender laws, all those sort of things are about to start imploding. But yeah, it can't be. It's one or the other, right? It's either a really much bigger deal than being able to move in and out of Bitcoin for people that are in Japan, or it's nothing.
Well, I think it is a bigger deal, honestly. Like, there's one thing that we haven't really been able to do, like with the 100% confidence here, is saying like we haven't been able to predict when Bitcoin's ready for whatever it's doing next, and like what exactly it's being used for now. It's like always something different coming up, and it's just like one of those things where it's like for right now it just doesn't seem likely. But, like this time last year, to say we would be at 14,000 after a big dip doesn't seem likely,
No, you're totally right. I mean, we could just be further along. And that's why I say, like, it's either a really big deal and we're going to look back on this as a really crazy moment in history, or it's just not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, maybe we're there, right? Maybe the sort of the folks that are in charge have looked at the circumstances and said, yep, this particular scam has run its course, and now it's time to close up shop. And that would be amazing.
Hell yeah.
Do you have something to say, Yannick?
Well, I was just gonna say that, like, if I went to Japan and they had this like national cryptocurrency, I probably wouldn't, as long as cash still exists. Whenever it comes to like national currencies, I will always prefer cash over any national digital currency, regardless of whether it's a cryptocurrency. I think even if it was built to be anonymous and stuff, I would probably still prefer cash unless I was doing a lot of online transactions. But yeah, I still, at this point, I'm not fundamentally interested in individual nation states developing their own cryptocurrencies, because at the end of the day, it's like, it's going to be less secure than Bitcoin. Like, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it works in every country. And so I don't see what value there is added with having a cryptocurrency for just an individual nation, unless it's, I don't know, designed specifically by like very small business credit union type things. But even then, like, if I'm just a tourist going to Japan, I wouldn't obviously have an account at one of their credit unions. So I would still need to use a currency that works in every country, which would be Bitcoin, because, so haven't really seen anything interesting in this area.
The whole idea of national currencies doesn't really even make sense, because in a free market, you choose the currency that works best, and that's probably not going to change when you walk across a line on a map that's, you know, arbitrary and made up. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's really no space for national currencies in a Bitcoin world. Maybe this will be a transitional moment, but I think that they probably know that this would hasten things moving in that direction. So I think it would be a tipping point sort of move.
Well, I just think
And
about
also
that's
any-
like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Any country, like you said, like any country that does this is going to be, it's going to be like a huge threat to the US, because the US is having like a crisis of faith right now, where all of these countries are trying, especially China and Russia, they're trying to divorce themselves from the US dollar as the reserve currency. And basically that's the reason why the United States has so much power in the world, is because their currency is used as the reserve currency. But if that starts to deteriorate, then that's going to be a huge problem. And I think cryptocurrency, probably some nations are going to make cryptocurrencies a part of that, because then they'll get, you know, investment and interest a lot faster than if they just said, oh, we're going to stop using the US dollar, and, you know, they have to get the news out somehow.
If you're the US government and you want to govern, and you're like writing laws for decades based on central banking and powerful figures controlling that legislation, how do you rechange that system from within that system? I don't know. I see Japan as a very, like, you're right, it's a market we created from World War II that, like, I don't know whose hands has been involved with the creation of Japan's markets, except for the military and the guys that are really interested in, you know, keeping America safe, and like the general patriot idea, as far as like somebody that really cares about their country. And I just, yeah, I feel like, you know, they can't do their job. In order to do their job, they need something like Bitcoin. How are you going to do that within the own system that you have here? Well, maybe like on another geographic side of the planet where you do have control of that market, you can kind of start testing it out and seeing how much blowback you're going to get on it. I mean, like, you know, to say that the United States is 100% within consensus that the central banking is the way to go is absolutely ridiculous. I think everybody kind of has like these different opinions, and to think that we're not, I don't know. I've kind of got this opinion that we're already at a civil war. This is like, it's all intelligence. It's all underground. It's stuff that we're not really seeing that front explosions. Like, wait, maybe it's so underground to where, yeah, JW's right. There's going to be a bomb dropped on that bank, and then it will be known.
I see a lot of conflation there, though. I see a lot of confusion between, okay, we have this anchor currency, we have the US dollar, and there's obviously some corruption going on inside of the US government itself. But a lot of these countries are directly contributing to the corruption and then pretending like it's not their issue. They're inflating and manipulating USD through their own currency and through trade and policy on their ends. And then they're brunting all of the blame onto the US government. And it's like, this isn't the way this works. I mean, I think everyone needs to kind of step back and look at their own currencies and focus on their own countries a little bit to improve the situation.
Most of them don't have their own.
Fix our shit, right?
Most of them don't have their own currencies, though. I mean, most of them, they have their currencies. They're basically pegged to the US dollar. There's really only, I think, Japan, China, and the United States, I think, are the only currencies that actually exist, and everybody else is based on that. And, you know, the United States is by far the largest. You know, we've been the only superpower for a long time now. You know, people look at the growth that's happened in China and think, you know, oh my gosh, they're huge. But they're not huge. They're still really, really small compared to the United States. The sort of, you know, panic was all about, oh my gosh, if they stay on this trajectory, right? And if you've been in cryptocurrency, you know that you're always hearing about, oh my gosh, if Ripple stays on this trajectory. Well, you know what? These things don't stay on the same trajectory forever. And so absolute size is still a factor. And if you look at what the United States, for example, spends on defense, I believe that it's $1 for every dollar that the rest of the globe spends combined in defense. It's something absurd on that scale, right? Like, and most of those countries that we say are spending money on their defense, they're actually doing it our direction, right? So if like Germany decides that they're going to put up a a missile curtain or something. That's actually the United States telling them to do that, right? So even that spending is greatly under control of the United States. So we are definitely in an interesting world, but it's possible that that we're going to see some major changes. But all I'm saying ultimately is this won't be like, oh, interesting, Venezuela decided to create a cryptocurrency backed by oil, right? It's going to be a much bigger deal than a token or a digital version of money that's owned by a government. If it has any value at all, it's going to be a direct competitor of the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, there's a fox in the hen house, a wolf among the sheep. We all know who your suckers are, and you've given into sin, pretending to be saviors, but you're the enemy within. Finance pipe dream.
Yeah, it's like the finance pipe dream, I guess.
Yeah, that's beautiful words there. Well said.
Like that's where it's just like I want to make it. It's like that just the point. It's like we say like even this state or this organization, that organization. It's like it's very much broken up. It's like nobody really kind of agrees within consensus on what their opus mirandi is, because I think like everybody kind of sees like it's not really efficient at doing its job. And so like there are groups of patriots that are coming together to say, well, we could create this and it might help us do our job.
Yeah, totally. I don't, when I say like the US, I'm mostly talking about the US government. I'm not trying to conflate the people in the government together. Because obviously they, those agendas very rarely line up in my opinion. But yeah, I think, look, if we get to a point where we have free independent money and it's competing, it's going to be a much more peaceful world. And I think more and more people around the world know that. And obviously that's why we have Bitcoin, right? The cypherpunk movement came out of an understanding of Austrian economics. And, that's kind of a central pillar of Austrian economics is that that when you have central banking, you have war, and they're inextricably tied up together. So there's a lot of highly motivated people to see that end. And I do think it's just a matter of time. I'm just not sure if it's happening in Japan right now, but it's possible.
See, like I didn't get a chance to cut in at the time, but like I really don't agree with the statement that there's no place for national currencies in a Bitcoin world, in the sense of like in the biblical sense of like a nation, like a group of people that is collectively doing something as a unit under their own power. Because like when you have like a currency, like you have the supply and then you have what the market will price that at versus other things. And I mean, as long as people aren't wildly getting out of control and just printing this money to go bomb them and bomb this, which they wouldn't in a Bitcoin world, because if they start doing that to a degree people don't like, everybody can just move to Bitcoin. But given that dynamic of competition, I do think there still will be a place for that and a role for currencies like that, because they do allow people to, like, under a degree of, like, say, inflation that everybody is okay with, actually use that to try to more efficiently utilize the resources they have. And with the alternative of Bitcoin, if a currency like that is ever taken like past the point people would agree with, everybody would just leave and go to Bitcoin, and that currency would collapse overnight. And the market in a way would just kind of keep those kind of systems in check in a way that it can't right now, because we don't really have that alternative at that same scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could make the case that they'll still exist in a free market and they'll compete. I think I think that that's wrong, but I'd be happy to see the experiment played out. But I think from history we can look back and say, even up until 1970, when we had national currencies, they really weren't currencies in the sense that they are right now. They were, in theory, just gift certificates for gold. And so this whole idea of what we're talking about is like a national currency that's not tied to an asset, which means that it's, again, just a gift certificate for that asset. It's a relatively new experiment. And if you look at the incentives for creating that experiment, they're pretty straightforward, right? The reason to decouple that is so that you can inflate the currency and you can steal that wealth. Otherwise, why would you do it? Because obviously you're not going to compete very well if other currencies are tied to physical assets and yours aren't. And you can argue that there's a lot of war that's been tied up in making sure that nobody else outcompetes the dollar. When the dollar doesn't want to be tied to anything, that people would have more of a tendency to trust.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of my point. Like in a market, you might not have a direct peg to something, but you will have what it floats to in market terms, and that's going to be a result.
We just never seen that, right? I'm not saying that it's not okay to run the experiment, but we don't have any historical examples of that. We only have historical examples of things that people tend to believe are valuable, and then governments maybe co-opting those a little bit. And examples of governments just flat out committing fraud. So, maybe we will see a government that is honest with money. I think it's theoretically impossible, but I'll play along. And I'd be fine to see that experiment conducted. But I think the outcome is going to be that people are going to choose the tool that works best, right? It's fine to have a bunch of tools on the market. And I think everybody knows that. That's why it's illegal to choose the tool that works best, right? That's why we had to outlaw gold for a period of time in World War II. And that's why we're all very, if you're running central banks, you're all very nervous about the existence of Bitcoin. You're trying to put capital controls in place. You're trying to make sure that banks are keeping a really close eye on when money flows in and flows out. I mean, they're not doing all this work for no reason.
Unless it's government money, then you should absolutely make sure that you cover the tracks of where it came from.
Right. Make sure you pay off HSBC right before you move that money.
Yeah, but
should we show the biggest block?
Yes.
History made today, people.
Janine, nice find, everybody. $2.1 megabytes, bitch.
I'm still seeing people claiming that SegWit was if they don't even acknowledge, or if they even acknowledge that SegWit was a block size increase, they say it wasn't a real block size increase. And it's like, what is the difference? Is the block getting bigger or isn't it? If it is, it's a block size increase.
Yeah, that narrative is just getting worse and worse. I mean, it's just getting sillier every day. But and maybe that's why we're seeing the mempool clear up. I wouldn't say it's because of the block size increase necessarily, but just because that narrative is no longer worth funding.
Yeah, I think someone said the reason that this block was particularly big was because let me check really quick. It was in that thread. Where is it? Yeah, Adam Back said some of it is people doing change consolidation at the cheaper weekend fee rate. So actually the reason the block is big is because people were consolidating their fees because fees were going down. Isn't that interesting?
Nice. Yeah, so it's an effect, not a cause of the mempool clearing up.
Yeah, but it's like right there. It's like, hey, if people use it, there's the capacity, people. Like, you stop trying to just go, no, it's not a block size increase because it's not Satoshi's vision. It doesn't count.
Yeah, I think
Finance
we heard about
pipe
it. That's what it is. Finance pipe tree. I think we heard that, right after SegWit, when the first block over 2 megabytes was bound. It's about the same thing.
Yeah, the next. Yeah, finance pipe, fat controller, but I don't even want to get into that. Have you heard of the fat controller?
Oh my gosh, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. We really need to have like a cartoon made that involves that hair and the fat controller.
So the fat controller, the fat controller appeared again on Twitter today, and there's a new article about how Lightning might not solve Bitcoin's problems or something like that by the person that always writes about fat controllers. And that same person says that Bitcoin is basically worth nothing, but it has enough value for her to write articles and tweet about it every single day, almost 24 hours a day. So it's really weird that something without value is worth talking about so much.
This is Francis
You know.
Coppola, right? Who is
Yeah,
this?
Francis. I mean, yeah, Francis. I don't know. I mean, I've seen interviews with her. You know, she seems genuine enough. You want to kind of give her benefit of the doubt, but it just gets wackier and wackier. I mean, it's okay. She just doesn't want to hear that her thing. What is her like tagline on Twitter? Get the facts straight if you don't want me to correct you, but you can never correct her. So it's you know, you have to be willing to have a dialogue. She says she is, but she isn't, and that's the problem with a lot of the stuff that she kind of writes. So, and she makes it kind of conspiracy, and she tries to make it a little bit complicated and throw in math and stuff. So most people will just kind of accept it. But I'm not saying that I'm an expert in math. I'm not claiming that, though. I'm just saying that she's obsessed with about 2 or 3 terms, and one of them is fat controller. Maybe we should kind of associate. I'm serious. It comes up every day. If you go into any of the Twitter, like if there's a Twitter comment and people are commenting about it, you can like count how many tweets until she talks about the fat controller. You know, it's like it's a certain
Literally
thing.
fat, like FAT.
Yes.
No,
yes.
he's not. It's the hair all over again. He's not making that up.
Wait, Fat Controller isn't like the nickname of one of CSW's workout machines at the gym?
It might be that too. It might be. But you know, basically it's just like a big controller that controls all of the transactions in the Lightning Network or something kind of like that. It's just kind of like a I don't know. And recursion can happen. The acrylic math set is going to have recursion inside the fat controller. Is basically all lyrics summed up, all articles summed up. There it is. See, fat controller.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just talked to a mathematician last night who said that she didn't believe that the economics of Bitcoin would work, but she loves the mathematics of it. So I guess there's some disagreement among mathematicians, but there's 2 things I like about that tweet. First, she tags Isabella Kaminska, who is like such an annoying anti-Bitcoin journalist. And I also like how the headline of the actual article says Lightning Network may not solve the scaling problems, whereas her tweet says Lightning Network cannot solve it. Like, that's a really big difference in terms. Saying may not, that's like a statement of probability, whereas cannot, that's a statement of impossibility.
Language, Janine. May, can't. I mean, these are all.
But isn't she supposed to be a kind of math expert or know a lot about math? So that seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of, right? So she should know. That's super important. You can't do that.
She should know the difference between probability and possibility. Yeah, I think
exactly. I think so. I mean, it kind of boils down to what Roger Ver said a while ago. It doesn't matter how good of a programmer you are if you get the economics wrong.
See, that's the funny thing.
I don't think
she is economically illiterate. Like, I got into an engagement with her on Twitter a while back, and this guy Chris Cook hopped into the exchange, pretty much denying that energy is not the root of economic activity. Like Chris tried arguing that it was space, as in like real estate or land, intellect, and the production of energy. And he denied that land takes energy to actually utilize the value. Like, if you have farmland, you need to input energy to actually realize the value of producing crops. If you just have a slab of land in the middle of the city, you have to spend energy to build a factory to actually use that to generate value. Like, when it comes to intellect, like creativity, you need energy in the form of calories to actually think and imagine things. In the terms of even energy production itself, you need to input energy to receive a energy return on your investment of energy. Like, this is an economist trying to argue against these statements. Like that energy is not the root of all of this. It's not the basis of the opportunity cost analysis, and that energy and value can just continue exponentially for infinity and beyond. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, and one of the good responses that I saw was someone asked her, like, don't you think Satoshi had a, like, even if the people who, like, most of the people who are into Bitcoin don't have as good of an understanding of economics or law or finance or whatever the things she listed, like, even if the supporters don't have that, like, they are I think I don't know if it was in that thread, but I did see someone tell her, like, don't you think Satoshi had an understanding of those things? Because you can tell from the white paper that he made considerations like that. It wasn't just about the tech, it was about like social incentives within the economy that this would create. And I don't remember what her answer was, but it was really, like, she completely dismissed it. And it's like, it sounds like you haven't even read any of his writing or the white paper, or, yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah, my guess is that this shows how cheap journalists are. They usually don't make a lot of money, and you can buy them pretty cheap and get them to push your narrative. So, I mean, maybe it's because she actually believes this stuff, or her husband is invested in something. But my guess is it's just simply a matter of writing a check, and you can get people like this to say what you want them to say.
And also the idea that, like, mainstream economists and psychologists, or whatever the other fields she mentioned, like, the idea that they have, like, the mainstream beliefs that they most often promote are somehow we shouldn't assume that their conclusions about Bitcoin are true, because it was one of the things that Aaron Verdum said when he went to the Bitcoin Milan meetup recently, that he said that the problem with Bitcoin is because it's such a specialized area, you can't just have a tech journalist talking about it and then have a finance journalist talking about it, because most of them are not multidisciplinary. They look at, like, the tech journalist, he'll write an article about the newest iPhone and, you know, may not have any training whatsoever in economics. And so he'll look at it from a tech perspective and won't understand how it could work economically. Whereas, you know, most finance journalists, they're Keynesians and they don't understand the technology. And so they don't, like, even if they had any appreciation for, you know, a gold-based system, they wouldn't see how something like Bitcoin could work like gold. And so there's a lot of disparity in their knowledge, like their interdisciplinary knowledge. So yes, I agree with her statement that in order for someone to create something like Bitcoin, you would need to have that kind of knowledge. And I'm pretty sure, like, Elizabeth Stark has legal knowledge, so she would have that covered because she's a lawyer. But I'm sure a lot of the people that are working on Bitcoin and were part of creating Bitcoin have that multidisciplinary understanding, whereas a lot of the journalists really don't. Yeah, she needs to think about that.
Yeah, I just started digging. Her name rings a bell, like in my head, because I remember it was like last year, the whole SegWit argument, and like you know, she was a writer for Forbes then, like, and you know, it was like Forbes article about, you know, Bitcoin was a bigger deal back then, and you know, it was just like most of the information wasn't really like you know, wasn't really correct. It just like seemed like it was kind of arguing from these simplistic perspectives instead of like looking at the overall bigger picture of things.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Now let's trigger some people. Who wants to be wild and reckless with their money? Lightning. Yes, lightning, mainnet. It's not ready yet. There's still bugs. You can still lose some money, but lightning. Come on, guys.
Man, they should. Man, these Blockstream people, they should do testing. You don't do testing on the main net. This is just a conspiracy for people. I mean, they're so cheap. They don't do their they ask us to do testing on the live net.
Testing on the main net.
What? No, you should be doing testing before it. This is like, what is this? This is beyond belief. This is just an example of how bad they are, and this is maybe the reason why Gregory Maxwell had to leave.
Why would you get average users to do the testing for you? What you're supposed to do is do it in a secret group of developers and then release it later. And then
this is a total finance pipe dream. We're gonna throw this. We're throwing this hair out the front door.
Make the pipes big. Make the pipes bigger. Pipes always have to get bigger. Terabyte pipes.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound cool. Look, it does sound cool. At my local meetup, there was a guy from Jonas from Blockstream did a presentation. But he said, it is dangerous to use this. So, he was like, don't use it, basically.
Sticker. No, stop. I don't care. Theo,
however, you can do it if you want to,
Sticker. They got stickers.
It's kind of, yeah, okay.
T-shirts.
Great.
T-shirts. Always have to have T-shirts.
If they make a T-shirt that says Borg Stream, I might buy it.
That would be amazing.
Oh, I would buy that.
Maxwellists. No, we need a shirt that says Maxwellist. Oh, but wait, didn't Gregory Maxwell just leave because he wants to focus on Bitcoin more and not run a company?
Okay.
Oops.
I need to get this.
That's part of the conspiracy. Greg Maxwell is still working for Blockstream secretly. He just doesn't want the pressure of all the trolls.
Guys, I need to be serious for a second. Okay. Anybody who wants to take the risk, you can do this. You can follow the links. There's guides. Don't put a lot of money in, though, because there are still bugs in Sea Lightning, and you can lose your money. For those who want to try this, though, and not use Sea Lightning, you can also recompile LND with mainnet flags, which is a lot more stable. So if you still want to purchase something from the store, but you don't necessarily want to risk the bugs in Sea Lightning, you just poke around in LND. Even as somebody who can barely write code, the source code is beautiful, easy to read. You just got to change the hard-coded flags for testnet, compile, and you're good to go. But, okay, all right, back to trolling.
No, I think didn't Blockstream say they would pay for it if you lose your money and you're trying to buy something with them?
I didn't see any specific announcement like that.
I know there's
since they'd send them the sticker anyway if it didn't go through.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Yeah, so God forbid you lose your $20, they'll still send you the T-shirt. But yeah, don't put $2,000 in. Although I don't even think you're able to right now. I think all the hubs are preventing you from doing anything too stupid crazy. But yeah, it's totally worth it. I mean, you're going to get an education. You're going to get the experience of seeing how this is going to work and sort of the satisfaction if you've been a Bitcoin holder of knowing that you were right and being able to touch and feel it. And, if you lose your $20, you still get a T-shirt. So why not?
Mm-hmm. And remember, though, if you don't have balls of steel and don't want to use Sea Lightning, like I said, you just poke around. I'm sure there's people floating around the communities that can help you get LND compiled, but that is a lot more stable if all you really want is the merch to trigger people like myself. So don't forget that's an option too.
Yeah, I think this is awesome. Just like like Theo's joking about testing on mainnet. What is this? But it's it's awesome. This is open source for people that don't know. It's the things roll out and we keep testing it as it goes out. So it's been in testing on a testnet and now it's being tested on mainnet. So it's awesome. Really, I'd like to spin up a node and buy one of those Don't Trust Verify shirts.
Well, I mean, I think Blockstream really should have taken the Roger Ver approach where you say everyone's money is fine. It's still there. It's not going to get lost. I think they should have gone with that. And maybe Roger Ver would have been more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Totally.
Instead, they had a bunch of warnings saying this is still being tested. You might lose money. Even though they didn't have that in the tweet, it was on the page. They said it was, new software, alpha. Or
that's going to be
beta yet? I don't think it's beta.
That's going to be the meme for all detractors of Lightning. We're still in testing. Sorry, guys. And it's going to be all of 2018 is going to be we're still in testing. I can see pictures of that. There's this one picture of Maxwell in front of the kids, and he has the satellite dish. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's really good. But I can imagine that one. It just says, "Kids, we're still in testing." you know, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, of course, you go into testing mode, and then of course it still can be live, and you still have testing. I guess you should get, you know, a little ribbon or something if you're able to actually buy something with it and not lose your funds. You know, you should get a trophy or something, I guess.
Well, I just like posted this in the side chat here. Like somebody got, you know, it's like, I'm just curious. Like this guy got like a commit access tied to the GitHub whenever he did his transaction, I guess. Like that's what I posted there in that side chat. Did y'all check that out? Let me see. Yeah, that like I guess you get like a commit in GitHub whenever you do your transaction.
Yeah, you show up in the contributors list.
So there you go. You're now a Blockstream, a Bitcoin Core contributor. Whenever, so I mean, like, there's like a little neat little rabbit, you know, thing for doing the transaction.
Yeah, I mean, you should get a little bit of credit for testing. That's awesome.
What I have noticed is that the fear, uncertainty, and doubt around Lightning from the Bitcoin Cash crowd is that they've switched from saying Lightning is broken, it's stupid, you're going to lose all your money, it's anyone can spend, which is exactly what they were saying about SegWit. Oh, and then they realized that was just idiotic to keep going with. Now they've switched to, oh, Lightning Network would work better on Bitcoin Cash because we have bigger blocks, so you could fit more Lightning transactions in it. It's like, oh, okay, so you would be okay with Lightning on your bigger blocks. So there's actually not a problem with Lightning.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that they made this mistake when they created Bitcoin Cash, and that's they didn't implement SegWit, so they can't do Lightning.
Oh yeah, what do you? Transaction. Oh yeah, they still have that transaction malleability problem, and it's also Lightning is going to be super inefficient without that. Oops. Oh, and Bitcoin Cash. Sorry about that.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And there's no way they have the engineering talent to deal with the with sort of the all the checks and balances that they'd have to put in to make Lightning even functional from a security standpoint. So it's just never going to happen. Nobody's going to write code to make Lightning work on a chain that doesn't have transaction malleability fixed. It's certainly not going to be those guys, whoever they are. I think like the one dude that can't seem to manage to write code without like 7 off by 1 errors or something. So it's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I guess Acnix has got to run and take care of some personal stuff. So I guess I'll catch you later, Ak. Sorry, you got to cut out early.
Yep. Sorry, guys. See you next time.
Mm-hmm.
Later, man.
Catch you later, man.
We went long because we've had so much fun talking about that video to start out with.
Yeah, that would really tie us down.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Lightning is like the FUD is like, I mean, like me and Janine are working on the second episode of ZK Snacks right now, dealing with Lightning actually. So hopefully we can really dive deep in that. But it's like, God, I cannot even begin right now with where that FUD is gone, or I'll be ranting for the next 20 minutes.
All I can say is I hope 2018, in addition to being the year of sort of big government involvement with Bitcoin, maybe international conflict stuff, I hope that it's the year where Roger Ver becomes the Mark Karpalis. You know, like he's just completely irrelevant. He just doesn't come up anymore, and we've just moved on. That would be a hell of a year.
Yeah, we're going to tell you all about how Lightning Network is fractional reserve banking. That's the new one now. But apparently Bitcoin Cash people are okay with that. They're like, yeah, we can have Lightning on Bitcoin Cash. Well, you actually can't. So poor Bitcoin Cash can't do fractional reserve banking.
So dumb. So many layers of dumb there.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess next up is something Janine wanted to touch on real quick, and hopefully, cross fingers, we keep a nice schedule. Maybe this could be a more in-depth topic for ZK Snacks 3.
Yes, this paper was published 5 days ago. And yeah, we're probably going to make a ZK Snacks out of it, so I'm not going to get into too much detail. Just wanted to point out that it was by Gregory, Maxwell, Andrew Poelstra, Yannick, Seurin, and Pieter, Wuille. And it describes a new multi-signature scheme for Bitcoin using Schnorr signatures, which have come up a lot in the last year. And this scheme would allow for key aggregation, which, quote, informally means that the joint signature can be verified exactly as a standard Schnorr signature, say that 5 times fast, with respect to a single aggregated public key, which can be computed from the individual public key of the signers. So basically what that means is that it allows for smaller transaction sizes and also lower computational costs for verification of transactions or signatures of transactions. And which was one of the things that SegWit also did, because it not only fixed transaction malleability, but it reduced the complexity of signature verification. So this is what you do when you do on-chain scaling stuff. You don't focus on the simple solutions like making the block sizes bigger. Although maybe we'll have to. I mean, maybe we'll have to do that in the past. We'll never. I mean, we just did it with SegWit, but maybe we'll have to do it again in the future. Don't know. But the most important thing is that you try to make the data smaller. That's how the internet scaled. If videos had stayed the size they were back in the 1990s, we would never be able to live stream that kind of stuff as we do today. We had to make it smaller first with compression. And so, yeah, signature verification, computational costs. And then once again, the reason I wanted to point this, just give a shout out to this is because once again, as I've said before, it appears that Bitcoin is making more advancements in multi-signature than Ethereum is, which is what I consider multi-signature to be level 1 of smart contracts. And it's just amazing that there's still not a single secure consumer-facing multi-signature application for Ethereum, which anyone who thinks that, like, we've seen a lot of smart contract talk, but it seems like all of the meaningful smart contracts, or at least the ones that are secure and work, are on Bitcoin at the moment or are about to be on Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. All the real technical innovation has been on Bitcoin for a really long time, with maybe some really tiny exceptions in, things like Monero, where it's just kind of got this interesting little quirk here or there. But yeah, all the real work has been on Bitcoin for a really long time, and it's continued to be on. I mean, it's always been on Bitcoin, basically. We have all the talent, we have all the smart guys that are working hard, and all the new stuff is coming out. Schnorr signatures are really cool because they were kind of the original digital signature algorithm, but they got patented, and so we had to use ECDSA, which is kind of this semi-goofy workaround, and so it's not as elegant, it's bigger, and there's fewer things that you can do with it. And that's the kind of stuff that is just awesome to see on Bitcoin, where they go back and sort of put in more elegant solutions like SegWit, fixing transaction malleability, and Schnorr signatures. And I think, it's going to be more than just a little bit of space savings, right? Like when you get the foundation right, it has really interesting implications over time. So it's very cool.
Yeah, I just love seeing all these developments, honestly. Yeah, Schnorr signatures, everything. Like, I was just watching a video earlier today about Mempool, and that's really blowing my mind. So, like, yeah, all this stuff that's coming out, it's like new, yeah, I mean, like, it's awesome where we're at, but things are still moving forward.
And I guess we're probably going to push 2.5 hours easy, guys. This next one, I don't see doing anything but starting a long conversation. But for those of you unaware of this, BitMEX actually sponsors this blog, BitMEX Research. And they actually do some pretty in-depth analysis and study of, different aspects of the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space. And this is a third part of a so far 3-part series on mining incentives. They published the first 2, which are pretty interesting reads. I'm not going to go into them, though, back in September. And this one is kind of looking at the difference of incentives depending on the time horizons that a miner's involved in. And specifically, they're kind of looking at the replace by fee, ASIC boost, to the block size limit, like aspects of the protocol and how the incentives kind of inform this. And pretty much the long and short thesis is, with a lot of miners, kind of rumors going around, like you've seen Bitmain take investments from Sequoia and I think one other firm, the name escapes me right now. But, these are kind of the moves towards public offerings. And once you have a company go public, like that completely changes the dynamic. You're now accountable to the shareholders. You're actually legally obligated to maximize the profit for them. And that completely changes the incentives of the business. And one of the things he was looking at is kind of traditional like ore mining. There's something called, brain fart, high grading, which is pretty much what they'll do is they'll look at a potential like dig out to expand a mine and the ore that's available there, and they'll shortcut it. And so what they'll kind of do here is only concentrate on the high density ore pocket, which will bring the cost down and have a higher profit margin for that short term. But then imagine all of this is digged out and it's just this left now. That drastically alters the profitability of what's left after they pretty much spend their capital investment on this high grading, only targeting the really high density ore. And so it's kind of an analogy, I guess, in traditional mining of how that short-term thinking, while it might be very profitable now, pretty much fucks your profitability in the long term because, well, hey, once you burn through that, now the operating costs to get to the rest are much more high because you haven't like spread that cost out over the total. You just kind of went through that gold rush to get the real juicy part first. And kind of looking back to the possibility of miners having an IPO and kind of being held accountable to shareholders, that completely changes like what miners can do. Like a miner might be able to like just kind of cut corners and not really make as much profit. Okay, hold on. Okay, my brain is farting on too long of a monologue. Let me reset here. Okay, when you have like
it's all right, man, you're doing good.
When you have the accountability to shareholders, like something right now like replaced by fee is opt-in, and it's specifically opt-in where miners are only like replacing things in their mempool for a block candidate if it's flagged. Well, when you have margins tightening, when you have competition increasing, if you throw something like being accountable to shareholders in the dynamic, well, as a shareholder, hey, why aren't you replacing everything by fee? Like, what does it matter if this flag is here? More money. Like, it's more money if you take the one with the higher fee, so do that. And in the same way that like the increasing the block size is going to alter the economics of the situation because, hey, like it might be in your long-term interest to not grab everything in the mempool, even if there isn't a block size, but hey, you throw something like accountability to shareholders in or tightening competition, a miner would just scoop the whole mempool if that was in their interest or if it needed to be done to maintain profitability. Even though in the long term, that completely screws up the mining incentives. And so it's really like, depending on the time horizon that a miner is looking at, like it's very different like in terms of the actions they might take based on that time horizon. And pretty much at the end of this, like, the whoever is operating this account is pretty much saying that in the long term, like we're going to see a transition to full replace by fee where it's not optional. And if the mining incentives move that way, there's really nothing we can do about that. And he even talks a little bit about the potential of overt ASIC boost instead of the covert version being used, simply because that's the most profitable move. And, at the end of the day, if it's more profitable for a miner based on whatever time horizon they're looking at to do something, they're going to do it. And so the kind of static way that a lot of people look at the incentives of miners, like they mine blocks because they're supposed to and get paid. That's it. Like that doesn't really reflect the reality of mining incentives in this ecosystem at all. And they're much more complex than that and much more capable and prone to kind of shift equilibriums rather than just constantly be at this never changing equilibrium.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that I buy, to be honest. I think we've seen a lot of miners that have thought that they could attack and break Bitcoin in ways that would be profitable to them. And so they've tried and they found out that it didn't work out, right? And then we've also seen miners participate in scams like Bcash because they can deceive investors into buying their crappy coin. Not that that directly impacts Bitcoin, but it certainly can slow adoption if those people would have been not distracted and able to focus on Bitcoin. But I don't think that I'm not at all worried about the mining incentives beyond those sort of, actions of.
Well, I'm not saying like the things are going to implode, but I'm just saying like there might be over time changes to how miners react and how we have to react as far as how the protocol is structured and other protocols are structured on top and how we use these things based on how miners are incentivized to act. Because I mean, for instance, like a replace by fee, like you might still have like businesses or merchants out there accepting zero conf if it's not flagged replaced by fee. A year or two from now, that might be an incredibly stupid thing to do because all of the miners are now just replaced by fee for everything because that's economically what they're incentivized to do. Whereas right now, they're still kind of honoring that. You know what I mean?
So explain to me the concern around replaced by fee, because I'm not really following it. I mean, the ASIC boost thing is not an issue for sure because that transaction.
I wouldn't say it's a concern, just more of an observation. It's that right now it's only opt-in, and so to pretty much from everything we can see publicly, miners only are doing replace by fee for a transaction initially flagged for it, like having a bit flag in the transaction. And what he's saying is that over time, the incentives are probably going to lead us to a point where they're doing that for everything, whether it's flagged or not. And to see that as opt-in it's going to be a bad time for people if they're still looking at it.
Yeah, the reason they made it opt-in, because I don't know if how many people knows the history of replace by fee, but actually the original idea of having the ability to do replacement transactions, which is just where if your transaction is stuck or maybe you sent it wrong, then you have the option to replace it and try to get it into the blockchain before that first transaction. That idea was actually in the original Bitcoin code written by Satoshi Nakamoto. It got removed in, I think as early as 2010, probably not as late as 2011. It got removed because there was apparently denial of service attacks going on. And then along comes Mike Hearn, and he thinks, oh, we should re-enable this. And this was something that I had tweeted about, I think earlier this week, because Peter Todd brought up the fact that one of the things that Mike Hearn said on his way out of Bitcoin was that he was against RBF and it was Bitcoin Core's idea and he thought it was dangerous. And it's like, Mike, you were the one that advocated for it to be re-enabled, and so it originally wasn't replaced by fee. It was just the ability to send a replacement transaction. The reason they added the fee part, replaced by fee, is because that was the denial of service protection that they added so that it wouldn't have the same problem. But yeah, actually, Mike Hearn wanted to just re-enable the ability to do replacement transactions, and that was in 2013. And then opt-in RBF was added like two or 3 years later. And then when Hearn quit, he claims that it was Bitcoin Core's idea. And it's like, no, Mike, it was actually your idea. You have a pull request in the Bitcoin GitHub that anyone can look at that shows that you wanted it to be there. Now, was it your idea to have the fee part? No, but you did want to have replacement transactions, and that's what you complain about the most, because apparently now he thinks it was dangerous, and he doesn't explain why, really. But yeah.
Well, yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, the fundamental mechanism that encourages miners to include your transaction is that they get paid to do it. And we've seen periods where they thought that they would get paid more by fighting against the system, right? By spamming it or trying to mine another block or do the Bcash thing. But I think history has probably shown us, with the exception of maybe being able to scam some really, uninformed investors that it's not cost effective to do that. And I don't think that whether replaced by fee is on by default or it's opt-in, I don't think that changes that sort of fundamental equation.
Well, I'm just thinking like replaced by fee, like wasn't that put in there because it was like, well, the fee estimation wasn't that great. It's like maybe sometimes, where the mempool's high, it's like you need to raise it where to get your, because it's important to get your transaction through, or maybe it's a little too high and you need to lower it. Like the lowering part was a part of that replaced by fee too, is right?
I don't think that you could lower it because your transaction's already out there and somebody can grab that.
Yeah, I think it's strictly limited that you can only raise the fee.
Because what you're doing is you've got a transaction that a miner could include, and he's not including it. And so maybe you haven't created enough financial incentive to do that. So you're creating a new version of the transaction, or the child pays for parent thing is you're creating a transaction that's dependent on the previous one that has a bigger fee in it. But either way, at the end of the day, you're just trying to pay the miner more money to do the work that you've asked them to do. Or that's probably a bad analogy. You're trying to bid. You're trying to bid higher in order to get block space.
Well, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, like I started to, like we were saying like earlier today, the mempool's down, the fees are down. And I saw something on Twitter about, well, maybe it's got something to do with all these lightning channels being used. And that's just something else where like this other factor in this big meta game of mining, it's like, when a lot of transactions are off chain, or they're not really using fees, like then like, I don't know. I could see the fees being lower at that point just because the transactions are for the most part feeless. So I don't know, like in the way things are now, like, we say like things change. It's like, I don't see it being this way like for a while. Like, I mean, once more people start using Lightning, like, which we're seeing a lot of people are interested in this, like tech and, changing the way that they're doing things over towards these Lightning channels. We might see like these, I don't know, this whole like fee argument, like just totally reverse directions or whatever, like Schnorr signatures, all this stuff, Wimble. It's like so many things in the future to where we can we're trying to judge how they're going to be dealing with this thing in the future. I don't know. It's like we can try and guess like how it is going to be because of where we're at now, but it's like there's like Bitcoin's just always changing, so it's hard for me to say with any like certainty that like this is how it'll be.
Yeah, I'm equally as concerned that maybe the fees will be too low because of Lightning to secure the network properly. As I think that's the only real possibility on the horizon, right? Everything is pointing towards bringing the fees way down. I think the block reward, because of the value of Bitcoin, is going to continue to go up so much. Is more going to compensate for that. But if we were worried about one side or the other, I would say, yeah, fees being too high doesn't look like a realistic concern based on what's coming down the pipe.
But I mean, that's why it's important to get that out now and have it adopted now and see how that equilibrium affects things before too much of the subsidies petered off.
Yeah, I think that's also a good point as to why it's important to test it on mainnet.
But yeah, so the next thing is something that probably shouldn't shock anybody, but very well might. So, for those who don't remember, Mike Johnson posted not too long after the Bcash incident with Coinbase, claiming to have undeniable proof of insider trading from Coinbase with actual testimony from Coinbase employees. And then, poof, his Twitter account disappeared. And there's no explanation. Well, yeah, you can see this message. If we actually go into his account and look, pretty much what happened was his account was mass flagged. And yeah, actual news with actual evidence from a person who historically in this space has called bullshit right every single time he's called bullshit and claimed to have evidence of something. was literally scrubbed off the internet. And he is not allowed to post any evidence of a factual assertion on Twitter, or he will be banned. So I'd like to point out that, we see clear evidence everywhere of Bcash shills, a sizable chunk likely funded by people like Roger or nChain. But I mean, who besides Coinbase really stands to benefit from pulling this with Mike here? And like, I think the possibility that an actual company in this space and not a man-child funding sock puppets is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, this is one of those things where whenever I saw it, I was like, "Oh crap! I just bought the dip twice." Like, it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know though. It's like we were saying whenever the first news came out about this, like, it's just a tweet. It's a lot of speculation, and but. We can look at the information and see that it's pretty apparent that there's definitely some insider trading going on, like whether or not that's really in his hands. I mean, we got to speculate about that. And like, we'd have to further speculate about all this, but I mean, it's like, it's not too hard. I mean, like nowadays we're starting to see things more and more where Twitter is starting to take the approach of like, I don't know, they don't mind censoring free speech and calling it fake news nowadays. And, there's definitely some big players involved with Coinbase. So, I mean, like, it wouldn't be too surprising. It's not too much speculation to say that that's possible. But, like we're saying, it's still speculation. But, yeah, I mean, like, it wouldn't be that surprising, right? It's like, I don't know. Coinbase has definitely got a lot of funding. And, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's scary to me just to think about like if somebody like, is just talking about, what's really going on at Coinbase and illegal activity. And then like Twitter threatens to, delete their account or ban them or whatever.
Is the idea that that Roger and Coinbase, the whole Segwit 2X crew, or the New York Agreement crew, they basically have a budget and they have a bunch of sock puppets, and those accounts just report and flag enough to where you hit some automated thing and then Twitter just shuts you off because they don't want to deal with it. Is that what we think's going on?
Oh yeah, I've had this kind of thing happen to me personally plenty of times. Like one of the things they'll do is they'll scrub an account and like put some hot chick's avatar on it and post a couple nude photos, and then they'll have that like go around and start liking like your tweets or trying to follow you, and that collectively drags your reach down. But like, yeah, there's all kinds of things that get done all the time to try to negatively impact other people's reach with sock puppets. It's not just like positively reinforcing their bullshit.
Yeah, if that's the case, we just need a marketplace for this stuff, because I guarantee you Roger's budget is not as big as the budget of people that would like to see him not tweet. So we just need to create a website where you can make a 5-cent transaction that buys one sock puppet vote to knock these retards offline.
I personally prefer to know what weird things Roger Ver is thinking.
You like thinking about it? I'm not gonna get into that lyric earlier.
That almost went down a wrong path.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't thinking of that.
That was Rick. Sorry, Rick. Gosh, dang it, man. We're trying to do something special here.
Well, I mean, regarding that specific lyric, I have a theory about Roger Ver, but I'm not going to share it live on air. Despite what some people may think, how I'm very adversarial against bad journalists regarding Bitcoin, I actually tried not to get myself blocked because I like to be able to see the tweets of people who, don't agree with me and maybe, trying to socially manipulate other people in the space. I like to be able to see those tweets so I don't have to, obviously most of them have public accounts. So all I have to do is, put the link in a logged out browser and then I can see it. No big deal. But that's just an extra effort that I have to do to go and find it. So I try actually not to get myself blocked. And that's why I would apply that same policy to Roger because I do want to know what he's thinking, because even though obviously he's also manipulating people, I want that to be out in the open, because when he has his reckoning, there's going to be a lot of history behind it. Like, people call Twitter ephemeral, which is true if you only follow your live timeline in order, and you don't look at the history. But Twitter in itself is a huge database where you would be surprised at the amount of things that get revealed when you look through someone's history on Twitter. It's pretty amazing, because people think, oh, it's not a big deal that I'm revealing that I'm in such and such city, or I'm with such and such person at this time period. But then if you put it all together over time, it reveals a lot of information.
Yeah, totally. I'm just thinking that it's a shame that it's such a powerful media outlet for these propagandists, and that they're able to kind of take advantage of the fact that you can just downvote somebody or play these games. And those sort of things work really well when you sort of have a big central organization fighting against a distributed group of people, until those people build tools that make it easy for them to act in concert, and then all of a sudden the game is over. I think that it could be interesting. If somebody wants a weekend project, I'll definitely donate a little bit to the cause to make those voices at least proportionate to what they should be.
Yeah, speaking of which, how many of you guys got an email from Twitter about how whether you Russian linked activities on Twitter? I did not get that email, and I was kind of surprised.
Wait, what? You're supposed to check the emails Twitter sends you?
No, that is really disturbing, though, that a lot of people did get that email. That's very, very disturbing.
Well, I'm disappointed because, Twitter does a ton of surveillance on its users. And I wish, if I was Twitter and I wanted to actually be transparent and be helpful, I would actually tell people because obviously they've done all this analytics. They know which accounts, they make it very vague. They say you have either followed or liked content from accounts that we suspect were part of this manipulative activity from Russia regards to the election. Obviously that doesn't come out of nowhere. They know exactly which accounts you interacted with. So I don't know why they don't just tell you which accounts they have deleted on that basis and which ones you interacted with like that. If it was me, that would be really helpful information. It's I want to know which accounts they suspect are part of that, because that then gives me an opportunity to either dispel it or no, because that gives me an opportunity to either dispel it or I improve my vetting strategy for information on Twitter. I think my vetting strategy is very good because I haven't interacted with any suspicious accounts, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
But they can't tell you that, because then the public will find out that they flagged your friend Bobby as a Russian spy when he's working at some gas station somewhere, 10 hours a day, and they'll look like fools.
Yeah, which tells me that they don't. Yeah, that tells me that they don't actually have a lot of confidence in their algorithm. So why should people be freaked out that they're receiving this email?
I don't know.
It's good for a political story, maybe. It freaks people out and encourages them to be anti or pro whatever it is that Twitter is this week.
Well, yeah, it freaks me out. Honestly, it's just if they provided you that information, they couldn't arbitrarily shut you down. That's the thing, is this is hey, you're talking, we want to shut you down. What's it have to do with? Don't worry about it.
But wait a second, Twitter. I thought you had in your rules that states were the exception to the rule. Is Russia not also an exception to the rule? Are we playing favorites here?
Oh, come on. What the day that Trump did that, my button's bigger than yours. They're hey, it's okay if you want to threaten, actions and you're the government. It's so sides.
Yeah, and I love the fact that someone I didn't catch his full name. Is it Mike Johnson, the Coinbase whistleblower? Yeah, I love the fact. Yeah, I love the fact that his account almost gets taken down because it got scammed by reports. But something like Trump, like basically threatening nuclear war, is like, oh, sorry, can't do anything about it.
Okay, I entirely get the argument, but do not take my fucking Trump Twitter away from me. Do not. It has made life the most hilarious comedy show I've ever seen in my life. Do not take it away from me.
Oh,
That's
then-
true. You know, without Roger
Shinobi,
Ver's
you
Twitter
haven't
account, could we have seen that video today?
Shinobi, if you're gonna say that, I guess you haven't seen the Gollum Trump account.
Oh, I have. That's also pretty
Oh, you
hilarious.
have. So I guess you could argue that, you know, if Trump's account gets taken away, we also lose the brilliance that is Gollum J. Trump. The fellowship is broked.
That account is so funny.
Shuts down Bigley.
It like repeats everything he says, but in Smeagol's voice.
All because elves won't protect the precious, the filthy little
I
hobbits.
mean, like, it's like, why would you want to stop that? It's like the natural comedy that spawns recursive parody comedy that spawns like the shit show of idiots on every side arguing with. It's like it's a singularity of comedy that has Trump at the epicenter. It just, please don't take it away from me.
Yeah, I'll say I didn't follow Trump at all until he took office. And then it's like, yeah, you know, these things are pretty funny every now and again. It's just definitely different when it comes to like a platform, you know, like to hear your president talk like that.
Oh, I still don't follow Trump. I only look at Gollum J. Trump. He is the true president. He's the true.
Oh, God.
Hashtag
Alright.
Schmeagle shutdown.
All right, so other funny things from Twitter. So how much do you guys want to bet that these are exchanges or some businesses?
I'll put 1,000 on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it's not like just garbage data or something, you know, if there's actual money there, it's got to be a business because no individual would treat their own money that flippantly.
Well, considering that like a lot of the Bitcoin cash nodes are on Alibaba, like hosted there, you know, you never know. Maybe there's like some residual interest in Bitcoin and they're like, oh, let's put that on Amazon.
Yeah, but unless I'm misinformed, the Wallet.dat, like I don't have one on my node. I don't directly use the wallet's or the node's wallet. So like these have to have been used at some point, like for an actual wallet, or that wouldn't even be there. So I mean, this is like for fuck's sake, like the cloud is not the place to store the keys for a fucking digital bearer asset business. Like it's just like Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of more people hurt before like we really learn on that one. And like for right now, like that tweet was just a security researcher, right? Like there's not really been any like hacks like yet. But I mean, like it's just the possibilities are there.
Any funds. And my guess is maybe he doesn't think that it's likely, or he might not have announced them. But yeah, I mean, either way, it's definitely goofy that that's going on. But you know, on the other hand, is it right that there's been like over 1 million hardware wallets sold? I still don't know if I believe that number. It's just way too positive. You guys have seen that from Ledger and Trezor, right?
I think that needs to be taken with a kind of a grain of salt because, like, one, getting a hardware wallet, just all anecdotal from here on out for me. But like I know people who bought somebody else wallets to try to get them into the space securely, and they never actually bought any crypto. Like me,
No, I get that, but man, that is just such a large.
But I mean, hold on.
I would have said maybe 10,000.
I'm not done. I'm not done. Like I have owned a Trezor. I have owned a Keep Key. I'm whacking my finger with a Ledger right now, half of the people I know who have hardware wallets have like 3 or 4 of them as backups to like distribute, or like have, you know, family members capable of accessing things. So like for Ledger to say that they've sold 1 million hardware wallets, like, I guess awesome for them as a company, but by no means does that imply that even 500,000 people have purchased hardware wallets from them, because people buy multiples. Like, redundant security is not a stranger to the Bitcoin space.
No, I don't disagree, but man, put that in context of how many cars Tesla sells every year. I mean, that's a lot for people that have gotten interested in Bitcoin, taking the time to either buy some Bitcoin or plan on buying some Bitcoin, and then gained the knowledge to even know that a hardware wallet is a good idea, and then gone to the hassle of buying them. That's just a way more positive number than I would have expected. Tesla sells 20,000 cars a year. So if we're selling 1 million hardware wallets so far, that's pretty amazing.
I mean, like, that number is high, and but I wouldn't be too surprised, just because like there is that, you know, a lot of people that whenever they're coming on to initially invest, they want that security, they want that hardware wallet in order to invest. And so maybe a lot of like every user last year, you know, was buying a hardware wallet as they were onboarding.
Yeah, but I think that is the kind of contrast you'd expect, right? Like a company like Coinbase with a bunch of employees that hate their jobs are going to do stuff like throw the wallet.dat file on AWS, and then, you know, the average person that is going to buy $150 worth of Bitcoin is, you know, shaking with fear and trembling, trying to figure out how to secure that. So good stuff.
And speaking of signs of deep population penetration, you want to walk us through this next one, Janine?
Yeah, I just wanted to include it because I thought it was funny, because the quote that was that stood out that I saw someone tweet is about how there's a therapist in New York City who says that his couples counseling has been sidetracked recently by arguments, like couple arguments over Bitcoin, or I mean, I assume you might do family counseling as well, because several of the stories are not only about couples who are apparently having arguments over their partners, mostly the man having an obsession with Bitcoin, I guess, and says in several sessions, aggrieved spouses just couldn't get their heads around their partner's infatuation. I thought infatuation was a really funny word to use. There was like a really obscene below the tweet that it was shared through, that it was like a couple together, and he had like a VR headset on, and it was the VR headset was like looking at a chart of Bitcoin prices or something.
It's too much. That is over the top.
It's like an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm really not surprised. Like,
what are you looking at, babe?
Obviously,
nothing. You've got the VR headset on again. What are you looking at? Talk to me. No, I'm not looking at anything. What are you talking about? I'm paying attention. Oh my God.
Well, I think they were also in bed, so that adds an extra layer of weirdness to it.
No. Oh my gosh! You know what that reminds me of? Sure. You remember that sign? I don't know if you guys remember the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza, he realizes that he can eat a sandwich and be in bed with a woman at the same time. Like, is this guy trying to pull a George Costanza? He's trying to trade. He's trying to get like all of the pleasures in life at the same exact moment.
Yeah, I still can't get over this one. Like, she didn't argue when he quit his stable job for a Bitcoin startup, and even went along with his insistence to only eat at the very few restaurants that accepted the digital currency.
I think we just need to make a pamphlet that says like what to do if my partner's a maximalist, and like.
Yeah, and see that picture was perfect, because even here you have a quote from a woman who says that they have a restriction on cell phone use in their bedroom because of Bitcoin.
Oh
yeah, we definitely need to think
I can put up with everything except for the VR headset in bed. That is just too much. I'm drawing the line.
Yep.
It's funny.
I think there's another woman who. Yeah, there's a woman who says that her son is into Bitcoin, and like she has no idea how it works or anything, but she says that he's like put some aside for her retirement. It's like, I don't know how this works, but apparently I have some somewhere because of my son.
No, I think I should just like you know, from my meetups is like there's been times where it's like couples in there, you know, and it's like when we're talking, it's like one couple's telling the other couple, like, look, you see, this is what I was talking about whenever I was saying this is important. Pay attention. This is what I was talking about. So like I think we do need to have like just like a pamphlet that says, you know, something about
Rick.
get ready.
Rick, you need to like be trained in couples counseling now. You're gonna have to prepare for that.
We're all gonna have to be ready for maximalist counseling. It's just like whenever people become maximalists, you're gonna be like, all right, so you know they're into it now, so this is what you need to do.
What to do when
you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to offer private sessions after the meetup, and you have to be prepared that the couples are going to break out in fights in the middle of the meetup over something. What do you mean RBF is secure?
But I get it, right? It's like they're at the meetups. They're like trying to understand it together. It's like I could definitely imagine it's like if you had a long-term partner and all of a sudden just like they fell down the rabbit hole real hard, it would be like something where it would be like, okay, we need counseling, like because you're going crazy.
I just want him to close the trading chat room, Rick. I just want him to close it. He spends all his time in there. I don't know who he's talking to.
You just got to get in there and learn these people and start talking to them too. Get where he's at.
I like that one line, like nobody likes to be told about something again and again and again that they can't understand. Like, I guess that would be frustrating. Gosh. I mean, if you knew somebody that was really smart and you were really dumb and they just kept trying to help you understand like basic math and it wasn't going to happen, but they just told you about it day in and day out.
Yeah, I could see how it's stressful.
Like, honey, I love you, but I have this other love in my life, and it's Bitcoin, and you'll never grok it, but you just have to understand and accept it.
Just take my word for it. It's awesome.
Well, that's why I think because there's been a lot of like Bitcoin couples that it's like that's kind of a special thing when you have, you know, both people that, you know, are into this stuff and they understand it and they don't get into fights like that with like normie partners. But I mean, I even have to admit that, there's been times where the chat room has been kept open too long. And even though I understand Bitcoin, it's like, we need to close that because the conversations in there can get really weird.
And you see, that's it, really. It's just like coming from an understanding point. It's like, you need to be in charge. Like, yeah, you understand like a little bit more than we do as far as like the relationship part of living in crypto. Like, because I think it is like, yeah, it's just an understanding thing. It's like coming to understand it. Like, maybe couples will be okay with each other. We might see some Bitcoin divorces though this year.
Oh well, I wasn't talking about you guys. I was talking about Chris.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm talking about too.
Well, it's conversations can go sideways, like this one right now. Venezuela is now trying to convince another country to use their shitcoin.
Not just any country, but a country that has a lot of investment and interest in a currency that would be backed by petroleum.
That's like the ultimate weirdo on this one. Is like it's the Petro-Cryptocurrency versus the petrodollar. Like I don't know why they named it the Petro, like other than like to be trolly.
Totally. It's just to spit right in Washington's face.
But
the funny thing is though, like how can it work? Like it's an ERC20 token. Like this is a shit coin on Ethereum. Like it's just like oh my god.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
That they're trying to reach out to other countries, right? Because that's usually how cartels break apart. Right now, we're all under kind of the U.S. dollar cartel, and if if there's the right combination of China, Japan, and some of these other countries that are on the outside, they're not benefiting as much from the dollar as they're paying in, right? Like they're net taxpayers. That is kind of the way that I would expect things to break up, right? They would form their own new group and say, hey, we're going to go with Bitcoin and we're going to take the bombs together, right? Or maybe there's enough of us to where our coalition is strong enough to where we're not messing with now. So those are the kind of plays that you'd have to make if you really want to break away from an empire.
Yeah, but this is like, it's not going to work. Like it's not going to work at all. This is like building this on Ethereum is like putting the hopes of your revolution on a shipment of super soakers. Like you are a deranged person. This is going to blow up in your face.
Yeah, I'm just like thinking like that Mitsubishi story we did earlier about how like they were trying to create their their own sort of like pegged token. Like, that seems like the smarter idea to go for whenever you're trying to create this sort of system like we were talking about to break out. And yeah, this is like you're breaking out, but with just like a little raft, and you're going up against the tides of the ocean. That's not a very smart route, but people will learn. I mean,
yeah, from a technical standpoint, it's kind of staggering, right? Like there's definitely the geopolitical, political, economic incentive stuff, but from a technical standpoint, if they're building this on Ethereum when Rare Pepe is like on an open dime on Bitcoin, like, what in the hell? Rare Pepe is like infinitely more secure than the Petro.
Yeah, the Petro. Maybe that's it. They know it's doomed, and they're just like tying it to the Petro, so people will be like, "Was that the Petro dollar that busted?" Nah, it's Petro token.
Right.
I just think it's a desperate government taking desperate, pathetically uninformed actions aimed at maintaining control in a country that they have pretty much destroyed. And it's like, it's just not going to work. I mean, like, even literally just forking the Bitcoin code base and starting your own chain with a different supply, like, that could work. But like a fucking Ethereum token, like seriously, you're going to bet the future of your nascent, like, new national currency on Ethereum, the thing that doesn't even have functional multisig, the thing that gets destroyed by pictures of kittens. That's what you're placing the hopes for your country on. Like that government is fucked when this implodes in their face, and the citizens of Venezuela just decide that is it. No more.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I wouldn't put that much faith in. And it's just like, I don't know, maybe it's like he got caught up in the whole momentum of it, where it's just like, yeah, Ethereum's the next thing. We'll just do it with Ethereum.
Or maybe Ethereum Foundation or whatever wrote a check to some guy just to put out the story, right? Just to make the silly pitch and then get it in the news. That could be cost effective.
Definitely. Didn't even think about that one. Playback from the old Factum call to Honduras.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you want to walk us through this bit of news from Elliptic, Janine?
Yeah, there's been a lot of news, obviously, over the past several years, but especially now that Bitcoin's gotten popular, that Bitcoin is going to be used as a money laundering tool. Well, this company in the UK who is part of the blockchain alliance, like BitCo and Bitfinex and all those companies are that we've mentioned before, Bitfury, they did an analysis of Bitcoin, and they found that less than 1% of money entering conversion services, and by conversion services, they include ATMs, Bitcoin exchanges, crypto exchanges in general, not just Bitcoin, gambling sites, mixers, and then multi-service things, which I assume is like, a mixture of any of those. Obviously, each of those had different degrees of like how often they were used for supposed laundering that they identified. But as a whole, less than 1% was found to be used or be sourced to. I like that they used the word illicit instead of illegal. I'm actually surprised they didn't just say illegal, because usually illicit does actually mean illegal or unlawful. But it's interesting that they chose the word, because actually other definitions of it just means that it's unlicensed or it's not explicitly permitted. So it would be interesting to know what they actually conceived of as being illicit. So yeah, the quote from, and just to be clear, they analyzed 4 years of transactions, and the highest proportion of illicit activity was in 2013 at 1.07%. So like the highest it ever went was just slightly above 1%. Interestingly enough, if I was at Elliptic and I had just done this analysis and I found that, 1%. So if the goal is to give advice to law enforcement about where they should dedicate their resources to combat crime, and I did an analysis and I found, only 1% or less than 1% of transactions in Bitcoin are to do with illicit activity, I would think, I should probably recommend that resources are dedicated elsewhere, because it seems like there's a very low risk here. No, in fact, their recommendation is apparently to increase KYC and AML practices and compliance in Europe, because according to their analysis, most of the illicit activity, even though there was obviously very little, most of it was coming from Europe. So they're apparently going to recommend to European authorities that KYC, AML stuff should be ramped up, which is, I find very strange, because you would, as I said, you would think that the government would be concerned about where to organize their resources, but no, they're just going to do it anyway, regardless of the results.
Yeah, the dark net or gray net market, or let's say the I don't know, we'll call it the black market in the United States and Europe, somewhere between 10 and 30% of all transactions. And so if only 1% of kind of gray market activity is happening on Bitcoin, that's at least 10 times less than is happening in the normal monetary system, right? So that's just, it's absurd to think that would be a problem.
Yeah, it's just like, these numbers, like you showed it going up like every year. It's just, I don't know. The increased KYC AML to fix a 1% problem. It just, it's like, it's a little too much. Like, go after the real guys that are laundering money. Let's go after HSBC. I mean, like, I don't know.
Totally.
People
I
are
bet
like, it's money
HSBC launders
legal.
1%. Like, just shut down HSBC and you could probably eliminate more than 1% of the gray market activity.
Right. I mean, it's like, I don't think they have an interest in doing that, because, those guys are writing checks, to people where it all sort of ties back down, So it's like, hey, there's 1% of a problem here, so let's keep at it.
Yeah, and I also want to point out, in their conclusion section on page 13, they say that, like, they list other cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin. They say Zcash, Monero, and Dash. For some reason, that's the only ones they list, primarily because those are the ones with increased privacy. But then they have this note that says Monero in particular is seeing increased adoption on darknet markets. Now, you would think, because apparently, according to Zuko, Zcash is superior to Monero because for some reason it has insufficient security and privacy. That's what he said at CCC, with no explanation of what the technicals of that were. Whatever. But yeah, why isn't Zcash being used on the darknet, or why isn't it mentioned as a possibility for use there if its privacy is superior? Well, guys, you may be surprised to find out, but Zcash is also part of the blockchain alliance that is explicitly said that they're willing to work with law enforcement to combat crime. And of course, you have the famous Zuko quote, which we've showed before, where he said that he wants to make Zcash, I think I don't know which word, not fungible enough for criminals, but fungible enough for everyone else, which is like, whatever.
Yeah,
So
I know. I feel like,
but I'm
Sorry.
sure that police law enforcement for him to say that.
Yeah, totally. I think Vitalik just tweeted out something this last week along those lines. Like, we don't really think most of the interesting applications of blockchain tech require high security. It was essentially what he said. So yeah, that's they've got quite the market niche they're expecting to appear there.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely says a lot about where their priorities stand, because I mean, I believe that Vitalik was complaining about the fact that we haven't done very much to help refugees with all these blockchains. Like, why haven't we done more? It's like, well, Vitalik, it would seem like you'd want to have censorship resistant applications for refugees, considering that they're in a precarious position and don't really have access to banking and may be targeted. But, you know, what do I know about that?
Right, and they're dying because the countries like Venezuela are printing so much money that they're completely eliminating everybody's savings. But yeah, no, that's not an issue for Vitalik. Let them eat cake, and they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, spies and detectives and would-be Sherlock Holmes everywhere. So let's trademark bad Shinobi segue. Yeah, let's do that. So this is a real awesome demonstration of why I don't think most countries will be able to get away with banning Bitcoin. Because yeah, all that Korea FUD, black and white members of the Financial Supervisory Service, pretty much kind of like an equivalent to the SEC or the CFTC in South Korea, are found to have traded based on insider information of the regulation announcements they were making. Yeah, and people are pretty much screaming for their heads. The interesting thing is, though, I'm not sure they're actually going to get caught. Or I mean, sorry, not caught. Punished, because there are specific codes preventing members of the FSS from actually trading in like stocks or other assets, but there is no like code of ethics or code of conduct related to cryptocurrencies right now. So technically speaking, under South Korean policy for this, I guess, there isn't really anything illegal in what they did. And after a shit show like this, considering the Samsung scandals that have been happening over the past few years, like just the political situation, like there is no way that the South Korean government could try to ban Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies and have that fly with the public. Like, no way. At this point, it would be just spitting in their face.
Yeah, right on. I think we were saying in the last show about how like that just political blowback would be a little too hard for him at this point, since like I think the statistic we heard was like over like a third or half, like a good percentage of South Koreans are trading cryptocurrencies. So like yeah, if they were to try and outlaw it, there'd be political blowback, and like we sort of suspected whenever people make FUD stories that they're buying up on the dips and selling and making their own little insider trades, then I guess like this is a good example of that. But like a good reason to do it is like they're not breaking any laws, I guess. There's no real laws against it, so they're not going to go to any jail or anything, so making money, I guess.
Yeah, the thing that I thought of was that if government officials are too tempted by their ability to kind of make market moving statements regarding Bitcoin, how does anybody think that they're going to be able to make money off of one of these altcoins when they're trading these altcoins? And you've got guys like Vitalik that can make an announcement, or maybe pretend to be in a car accident, or all of these sort of little goofy stories that come out that completely shift the market, and those guys would know what's coming, right? Maybe the oh my gosh, maybe Vitalik's dead story was not Vitalik, but somebody knew that story was coming before the story went out, and you can almost guarantee that they profited off that knowledge. And these things are too tempting when you're a major government official in a major developed country. when you're some goofy scammer, how can you think that they're not going to try to take advantage of that opportunity?
Yeah, I guess that's where it's like, I don't know, without any laws on the books, it's just like, everybody says it's the Wild Wild West. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a law for something like this. This would fall under any kind of reasonable definition of fraud, like deceiving people into losing money, and you make money in the process. That would always be fraud. So you don't really need a super specific law. But yeah, our legal system is such a joke that there's plenty of opportunities to do this without getting in trouble.
And to kind of tie in with that, here's another article that kind of pulled together a lot of Korean traders' reaction to all this after the market crash with stuff gathered from different social media. And I mean, yeah, is
a lot of broken equipment over there. And even like a physical tear.
But like, this is a lot of anger. Like this, like, yeah, you're not just going to like spit in everybody's face profiting off of this, ban it, and then have that fly.
Yeah, there's like a lot of people getting hurt over there. It looks like by these, by that FUD when it came out, and I guess a lot of people, were buying there at the FOMO around 18, and like since then they've kind of lost it, thinking like, oh, it's game over. I just wish like people would sort of slow down and start to think long term for at least a minute. But these guys that are just speculators, they're just they're living hour to hour, minute to minute, I guess. I mean, like, look at this. These guys are destroying their bathrooms. So it's like, yeah, it's like, not only are you pissed because you lost your money, now you can't take a shower and you got to spend more money to take a shower.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just like, it sucks. I mean, like, don't put your whole life savings in. Like, don't go all in if you can't afford that. And I am an idiot who is doing exactly that, telling you that. Like, it's not fun, and it does come with a lot of tense moments and a lot of trade-offs that, aren't really the kinds of trade-offs that most people would want to make. But like, yeah, you take the risk that you're actually willing to take. But I mean, to kind of go back to like the broader picture, it's like with something getting that kind of like reaction to this insider trading definitively coming out and being called out with the kind of market correction that, I mean, you can't really definitively say it's because of the announcement from South Korea, but it was a factor in it. And I mean, like, there is no way you can take that to the extreme and just outright ban it without riots in the street. Like, people will just like, no, like, what is this? Like, you can do whatever you want, but I'm only allowed to do what you say. Like, people only put up with that dynamic for so long.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's the Uber play, right? Like, Uber knew if they could get enough adoption in critical mass, that even though what they were doing was technically illegal because they didn't have medallions and they weren't greasing the right wheels of the right politicians, that their service would be too popular to shut down. And I think that's proved, a pretty reasonable play in their case. But yeah, it's cool to see it happening on even a bigger scale with Bitcoin.
Hell yeah.
And I mean, like, you even got central banks kind of humoring the idea or possibly wrestling with the future that awaits them.
Hell yeah, I like those results.
75% in a European central bank poll on whether we see Bitcoin as a viable alternative. A resounding yes.
It's like, 28,000 votes. Jeez.
Yeah, and I think Giacomo even said that this probably wasn't the best idea because, like, if you're a central bank, you don't want to be giving the opportunity for better currency to be promoted, because you might not like the answer that people give you. They might actually vote for freedom of money.
Totally. It's like AT&T doing a poll asking if, you know, the internet is a viable way to communicate instead of long distance calls.
I got a little hunch. Maybe it was a Bitcoiner in the ECB had control of the Twitter account. He's like, I'm going to tweet this, and on my way out, I'm never coming back to this place.
It's 4chan. It's 4chan. You're seeing the arrival of 4chan, people. It's not all kids in their mom's basement. It's people with jobs, people who run society. It's like Fight Club and shit.
Project Mayhem. Hell yeah.
But I guess the last bit of cool news for the day is Samurai dumping out another proof of concept for a tool to transmit Bitcoin transactions to a relay node through SMS. And as nothing much so astutely asked and found out, it is not an encrypted payload, so the transaction is actually in the clear. But I don't really see that as an issue for an initial proof of concept at all, because it's trivial to do. It's just a matter of how. Like, do you have a static key for each relay to have something encrypted to? As nothing much points out, there's protocols like Spake to negotiate a different key for each transaction, so things aren't as correlatable. And this is, it's a proof of concept, but like, let's see what we can build with this, because a tool to privately just zip your transaction along through an SMS, awesome. Let's start obscuring the network graph even more. Let's start confusing chain analytics companies even more. Let's make it as time consuming and expensive as possible to peek at your Bitcoin data and actually learn anything about you, because fuck them.
Well, I saw like a tweet about this, like talking about if you had this with some open dimes and, this whole situation with Puerto Rico and their power being out, they could have still transacted value, with this sort of thing. That's why I think it's super important that, like maybe the bridge isn't there, but let's start building it, because like, maybe it'll get halfway built because we need it at that point in time, and people will start building from that side and meet us halfway. I mean, like, it's just good to go ahead and get the concepts out there. Let's get working on it, because, we need these things now, and, or we needed it last year. So, good work, guys. Like a awesome job, Samurai, always.
Totally. Yeah. Every time something like this comes out, I'm like, yeah, I didn't really think about that. What a great idea.
It's just get the ideas flowing so that people who can make shit out of it, aware of the idea. I mean, the more that starts happening, the more we have synergy.
That sounds nice.
So I guess anybody have any last thoughts for the day? It's been kind of a long one, and not involving a hair in your ass.
No, I got nothing. I'm good. That was all I had. That was it.
Final thought is, yeah, thanks for sticking around the show. Good show.
Yeah, no, actually, my honest final thought is what a great week. Like, yeah, we got to make fun of some really bad marketing, and some really bad PR campaigns, but there's so many good things happening in Bitcoin right now. It's amazing.
My final thought is a quote from Hannah Arendt, who in her book said, "The question is not as for Hamlet to be or not to be, but to belong or not to belong."
Well,
Nice.
my last thought is, if you liked it, subscribe. If not, you don't know the way. See you next time, people.